everyone, welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. 'Tis I, Captain Logan, and joining me this evening, filling in for DJ, is guest chat moderator and guest producer, Connor Nielsen. Hello, Connor.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome back to the program, sir. Thanks a bunch for doing it.
Happy to. There was nothing after that. I'm sorry.
Connor has a multiple monitor setup, but his other one is like over here, so he's just gonna keep doing this. Tonight it's gonna be a fun low-key show. We're gonna talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. As always, we're gonna do a little bit of a lead-in topic, talking about Dr. Fate being added to the cast of Black Adam. I don't have a ton to say about that, but that's kind of as big of news as we've gotten in the last few days since the last show. So we'll chat a little bit about the Black Adam movie and how we feel about how that's coming together and that casting. If you want to make sure that your question or topic gets discussed on air, you can leave a super chat in any dollar amount. That helps keep the train rolling. Here on Geekvolution, we are 85 to 90% funded these days by the audience, so we really appreciate anybody who has done, ever will do that. You guys are wonderful. Thanks a bunch for the support, of course, but thanks also for the support of just being here and hanging out with us, and we'll tackle some pre-written questions as well. So anytime throughout the show, feel free to direct a question outside of super chats, just in the comments there, to Connor Nielsen, and he will throw a few of those at us as we go along as well. At least an hour tonight. We'll keep going longer than that if folks really want us to. Real quick, any house cleaning stuff, announcements for the channel this week. I announced, I guess, almost a couple of weeks ago now, that my wife and I got the crazy news that we're having twin daughters. And that has kind of upended my whole life because planning for two, I'm finding, is a little bit different than planning for one. Or at the very least, Connor, I'm finding myself a lot more focused on it than I might have, than I was when I thought it was just one. Because that I've done before. That I know, what to do with. This, it's a whole new ballgame. I'm assuming I don't know anything at this point. Where it's like the first time we've had kids.
I can't imagine why. I'm really excited for you.
Oh, thanks, man.
I also completely understand why you would be like, okay, game plan. Let's get this thing prepared. Let's go.
After three, I didn't really have like massive plans even for like night of the delivery and stuff. We tend to kind of fly by the seat of our pants with that. We've had so many kids now. I was just like, a week or two before you'd be a little early. We're like, we probably should go ahead and get this stuff together. Now it's like let's do it now. Like they're not gonna be this early, but they're probably gonna be early. And Connor, it's fun to finally get to chat with you a little bit about this because Connor is a twin and an identical twin at that.
I am. I've met your kids. They're great. I love them. But I'm really excited that you're having twins because, I just think it's cool that I don't know a whole lot of people who are twins, let alone people who are having twins. I'm at that age now where a lot of my friends have gotten married and are having kids now, but none of them have had twins yet, so this is really cool.
It's crazy. The only person in my family that has twins is my brother.
Really?
And isn't that wild? Like I'm the oldest of three, and the first two of us will have had twins now. But we could have easily stopped at three. Like I keep telling Sarah, the girls are gonna have to feel really lucky to even be alive because the odds against their existence was completely against them. The idea that we would have more than three, that they would be twins, that they would like it's crazy that it's even going to happen. But yeah, I can't believe that two of the three of us in my family have ended up with twins. And Dennis also got twin daughters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Or were they identical or fraternal?
They were fraternal, and they're finally starting to look a little bit different, but for the first 8 years of their life, they did look identical. Everybody thought they were identical, and Dennis always had to correct them.
Well, it's funny. Spencer and I are identical, but there are periods of our lives where we look more similar than not.
Yeah.
It's just kind of interesting how that works. And honestly, though, if you got twin girls and the fraternal, that's like double the probability of having them being the same sex, because usually most fraternal twins I know are actually boy and girl. And so I don't know.
Wow. So
the topic's very interesting to me.
Yeah, we hit the genetic lottery. It was crazy. But anyway, I don't mean to talk too much about this. The reason I bring it up is to say that I have been really busy with life stuff, and I'm trying to find a good balance, and this will be my life for, and it has been my life, obviously, trying to find the balance between the home life stuff and the channel stuff, and you guys know how much content I like to put out. But everybody just bear with me, because I'm having to really focus on my family right now, and obviously after the twins come, I'm going to take some time off. I don't know how long yet. I'm going to have to play this by ear and let you guys know what's going on over the summer. Sarah's due date is August 1st. I don't know why doctors don't change the due date with twins, because they're always early, and what the doctor will say is, we're not changing the due date, but it's likely to be at least 3 if not 4 weeks early. I'm like, then change the due date. It doesn't make any sense. You basically have done that, but not officially. I don't understand.
Yeah, I remember in my freshman year of high school, my social studies history teacher, his wife was pregnant that whole year, and a month before he's like, all right, 1 month left, and I said, hey, I was a month early,
probably not
going into labor today, and he went, don't say that. And then later that day, his wife called and she went into labor. I feel like I should have bet on that. That was like crazy.
You should have. You could have made some real money on that. I'm not endorsing anybody betting against their friends for when their wives or they're going to deliver babies. Anyway, so the reason I bring that up again is to say that I'm gonna have to cut back a little bit here and there, I'm sure, even up until the twins are born, and then after that I just kind of have to gauge what life stuff is going on. I'm gonna be father of 5 kids. For folks that don't know this, I stay at home. I homeschool. I'm gonna be homeschooling all of them. So I will sneak channel stuff in as much as humanly possible. I'm taking off at least another week from Rewind this week. We've got Easter coming up this week. I'm going out of town this weekend. I was probably gonna have to take this week off anyway, to be honest with you. But we are doing live shows, and I'll have a commentary for X-Men Apocalypse up for you on Friday. There is a commentary on the channel for that already from the old Marvel Mania. This one will be more detailed with a little bit more analysis and a little bit more complaining, because I've now done a full analysis on Rewind on that, and feel differently and more irritated about that film. So I did that directly after I reviewed it, like maybe a week or two after. I recorded that with Austin. So look forward to that on Friday, and then Rewind again, hopefully the week after, if not the week after that. But anyway, so thanks a lot for joining us tonight, folks. We will be back with you again on Thursday night for another one of these, and it is going to be a After Dark week as well. So patrons can stick around after that and hang out with us. We're probably doing a blind commentary this week, and I'm going to let Austin pick the movie this time, Connor, so that hopefully it's not lame. It's not a horribly lame blind commentary, because the last few of those that we've tried, I've picked things that I thought were going to be really fun to tear apart, and they were just boring or awful enough that they were no fun at all to have to sit through. So Austin's like the king of B movies that are like so bad they're good. So we're gonna let him pick this time, and it should be a bucket of fun. So,
well, if it's Samurai Cop, let me just tell you, you're in for a world of love.
He sent me that for Christmas, and I thought about asking him if we could go ahead and do that, but I don't know if it's available anywhere for people to stream with us, so I don't know how much that's going to make sense for a live thing, but we may just do it anyway. I don't know. Do you realize that, I might just be making up a statistic on the spot, Connor, but do you realize that some, like, 70 to 80%, it seems, people on the channel that listen to commentaries don't watch the movie with us, regardless of whether or not they've seen the film?
I mean, that's what I do.
We might just do it anyway.
I remember last summer I was like, trying to get back in shape, and I was like, going to the schoolyard when I would go visit my mom every week or so, and I would just like be doing laps and going. I would just that was the same day that you and DJ were doing your mystery commentaries. Yeah. And so I would just listen to your guys' live commentaries while I'd be like running and walking and stuff. And so that's what I did.
Well, anyway, we'll stop being middle-aged men for a minute and talk about what folks probably came here for. Connor's not a middle-aged man, I realize that. But we sound like middle-aged men. If this was
the Middle Ages, I would be middle-aged. I'm 25. I don't think the life expectancy was too long back then.
Hey, at least in Rome or Greece, yeah. So let's, but you know what? They respected their elders back then.
It's true.
They really did. Back during antiquity. Anyway, let's go
So
ahead.
what I'm saying is, I respect my elder, Captain Logan, and let's get going.
Yeah, I'm like a decade older than you. Okay, so tonight we're gonna chat a little bit about the Doctor Fate thing. Pierce Brosnan was cast this last week as Doctor Fate in the Black Adam movie, along with some other actors that I am not familiar with who have been cast as other members of the Justice Society. As soon as Doctor Fate was mentioned, I was like, oh, maybe they're doing a Justice Society thing. Now, until I see the film, I'm gonna find myself kind of wondering why it's not just a straight up Justice Society movie, why it's not called that. It's hard to say if that gets more butts in seats than Black Adam. I feel like Warner's is treating this, and going all the way back, because it's been years and years, a decade or almost a decade, since Dwayne Johnson was originally cast as Black Adam in not the Shazam movie, but by himself, and I find myself going, the only reason you do that is if it's just a straight up star vehicle. So first of all, Connor, like, what do you think of that casting? I think that's kind of spot on. It's almost obvious casting. Like, I think it's a good call. And then how do you feel about another team thing in an ostensibly singular, character DC movie?
So because I'm me, I'm going to answer your questions in the opposite order that you asked me them.
Do it, man.
So first of all,
sorry about that.
I think that the Justice Society, like back when they did the DC Fandom, I think is when they said they were doing Justice Society.
When they just showed
had,
concept art and had Dwayne Johnson reading from a script. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. DC Fandom was kind of lame, but hey,
it was.
There
was some cool stuff in it.
That was like probably my favorite thing that they showed off there, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat that they're doing Justice Society. They're doing Atom Smasher, Dr. Fate, and
Hawkman.
Who else? What's that?
Hawkman.
Hawkman. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Atom Smasher, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, and Cyclone.
Okay, yeah. So I think,
and apparently that's the whole Justice Society.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a little surprised that they weren't going crazy with it. But I'm not too familiar with the Justice Society. My experience with them goes to their kind of tertiary role in DC: The New Frontier by Darwin Cook.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know a whole lot about Dr. Fate. I think it's interesting that for a franchise sort of minded property like I'm sure Black Adam will be, that's why you probably get The Rock to play him. They're going for a role as for an actor who's kind of as old as Pierce Brosnan is. I'm sure he can play that character for however long. He just needs to wear a helmet. But
it might not even be him in the suit. I mean,
that's true.
It probably will be, but he could just voice it.
Yeah, so I think his voice is probably fantastic for Dr. Fate, but that's a character I actually don't know a whole lot about beyond he's got one really cool costume. So, I think it's interesting casting. And then I think it's interesting that for the Justice Society, they went with kind of one big name and then not a whole lot of other names that are, really big. And so you have like really big draws like Dwayne Johnson and Pierce Brosnan and then nobody. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pierce Brosnan as a big name is almost like a Marlon Brando kind of pick, where it's like he's a big name for people of a certain generation and older, but younger people aren't going to know who that is. Pierce Brosnan hasn't been in big movies in a really long time. Like, he's done stuff, but nothing that but no big blockbusters or anything. Nothing to the level of James Bond or anything close to that since the early 2000s. So you're right, but Dwayne Johnson's a big name for younger people, but a lot of people even in their 20s and 30s aren't going to know who that is.
That's true. There's probably some 20 people in their 20s and 30s who go, "Oh, hey, he was James Bond," and other people will go, "Okay," and then that's. I think the last thing I saw Pierce Brosnan in was that Jackie Chan movie called The Foreigner, which was directed by, I believe, Martin Campbell, but. That was a while ago. So
relatively obscure. He's not doing big movies.
He's mostly been doing TV, I think, because he had that show called The Sun, and he was also
I didn't know about that.
I think an HBO show that was based on a Stephen King thing. That might have been him, or maybe it wasn't. But I don't know. He's been kind of keeping it low though. So I think it's cool that he's going to be in a big movie again. But I'm curious to know how him being older and more distinguished will kind of lend to his sort of cast persona as James Bond.
Yeah, and just, how he acts opposite somebody like Dwayne Johnson, or how much screen time they even really end up getting. I can't picture this movie yet, which in some ways is kind of exciting. I don't know what this is about. I don't know what it's going to look like yet. It could be, once again, trying to shove too much stuff all together. You got Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. You've got Black Adam and the Justice Society, except he's the villain as the protagonist of the piece, and if that's handled right, it could be really fresh, because we've not done a lot of movies like that successfully, where because very often what we'll do is we'll do a villain movie that ends up just being more of an anti-hero thing, and this, with the Justice Society opposite the bad guy, could finally be that actually really handled well. The Harley Quinn thing was, here's Harley Quinn, who's an anti-hero, and a bunch of other characters that we sprinkle in throughout the movie that form a team at the end called the Birds of Prey, that basically are also kind of anti-heroes, or vigilantes of some kind, but it's not really a heroic group, and she's not really fighting superheroes. I'm glad that Black Adam is actually going to get heroes to fight. That wasn't a given, so initially, before we knew about Justice Society, and I guess some of these characters have been cast for a while, and I just hadn't heard about it, so I'm late to the party on some of that. But, I hope it's not too much stuff all thrown together, and I won't watch this movie and go, I kind of wish you just made a Justice Society thing. The characters that they're throwing all together are not as exciting as if you went with, if you did like a period piece that was set in, the 30s or 40s or something, and actually had the original Flash and the original Green Lantern and stuff like that. Like, that would be really super cool. So we're doing, once again, that set the Justice Society in the modern day thing, it sounds like. Although we don't know do we even know continuity-wise what this is yet? Is it totally its own thing, or is it actually going to connect to the splintered, half-formed DCEU we have right now? Is there a possibility of this Black Adam ever actually meeting that Shazam? Is it possible that they're holding this under their hat and they have their own version of Shazam for this thing?
I think they're going to pull a page out of the Fox X-Men universe and say, as far as continuity is concerned. Whatever kind of works here, they'll probably lump in to continuity later, but if it's a wash, then they'll just pretend it didn't happen.
Well, Blue Dragon 5 says it's not set in the modern day, but see, I didn't know if even that had been revealed, because it seems like they're keeping plot details really well under their hat. So if it's been reported that this is a period piece, I had not heard that, but I've not looked real deep into the production of this yet.
See, that'll be interesting to know, because obviously Dr. Fate has a lot of that Egyptian sort of aesthetic going on.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it'll be interesting. I don't know a whole lot about ancient Egypt and how maybe multicultural it might have been, but Pierce Brosnan's pretty white, so I think that'll be kind of interesting if he's kind of like an explorer type who maybe finds an ancient artifact helmet or something, and that's how they're going to do
there's a bunch of different Dr. Fates. In any given period, somebody picks up that helmet and puts it on, and then it ends up being kind of a symbiotic relationship. I guess it's more like the soul of the helmet takes you over and kind of turns you into Dr. Fate. Yeah, and because of that, if it is a period piece, it's always possible that, depending on how the story goes, you can very retroactively set it in any continuity you want to, because you can always have somebody find that helmet later on, and once again, it's Pierce Brosnan's voice. I'm curious to see if it's just going to be him voicing whoever gets in the suit, so if later on we have multiple Dr. Fates, it's still that voice you hear, right? But it's somebody else
that would be really
in the costume. I'd love that.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Then I think they might go one of two ways. So it's cool that he's fighting the Justice Society and he's fighting heroes. It's not like he's the bad guy who's got to take on worse guys.
Devontae Brown says that the HBO show you were talking about was The Outsider, and that was actually Jason Bateman, but maybe you were thinking of something else, and it was Brosnan. I don't know. Yeah.
But the other thing that I really like that they might do is that they might do a thing where the Justice Society projects an image of purity, but maybe they're corrupt and kind of scummy, and he kind of sees them as this sort of corrupt authority that he's got to take out. Maybe that'll be the direction they go. So maybe it'll all be about kind of the gray area of what heroes and villains, and instead of being absolute paradigms of good and bad, they'll be operating in that gray area for the film. That's
Yeah,
kind of
and
I think
I imagine that's what they'll do. I just hope that's handled better than some of their attempts at that kind of thing so far. Rohith Brosnan is playing the Kent Nelson version. Oh, I hadn't read that. Devontae Brown, it's not modern day. Everybody's saying it's definitely not modern day. I had not heard that, so that's more. Pardon me, that's more exciting to me. I hope that's how they handle that. I don't know if you saw this. I didn't watch any more of the show. It looked potentially promising, but I wasn't sure about the actress in the lead role. I watched the pilot for Stargirl when it came out, and that introduced a lot of Justice Society lore, but it's set in the modern day, and it has the Justice Society as a team from a long time ago, but in like the last, few decades, and it was... I think that show was sort of half trying to be, or at least in that pilot, like a little bit outside of time, but it was too modern day, and they were talking about the Justice Society almost as if it was a thing that was like in the 30s or 40s, but would have been set in like the 70s or 80s. It was very strange to me, and I was really hoping that this would not be that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, continuity is weird, and
well, I'm not saying it's bad because it's not in the same continuity as something else. I'm saying it's weird it's weird if you treat it like it's this golden age thing in our modern day in a period where we didn't have anything that remotely looked like that. Like I just don't see like golden age type superheroes in the 70s or 80s when you have all that urban upheaval, but you're acting like it was where it was like a simpler time or whatever. Not to say that every period doesn't have its like violent problems and race issues and things like that, of course. But I don't know, to pass the 70s off like the 30s is strange. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. So I guess the other kind of big news topic, I don't know, people were asking about this. We haven't gotten a super chat about it yet, but I'm sure like people have been asking about it. Did you see the trailer for The Suicide Squad?
You know what? I forgot all about that. Somebody told me the other day that had dropped, but I've not been online at all, guys. I've kind of had to put everything on the back burner for the last few days. So yeah, let me watch that and try to respond to it in a later video. But you can talk about it for a second, Connor, if you want to.
I think it looks good. Like visually, it looks really neat. Mm-hmm. I like James Gunn as a filmmaker. It looks like he's kind of going back to more of his trauma exploitation style kind of tone, a little more irreverent humor, and I think that's neat. It looks like it's going to be a good movie. I think just as a trailer, like I don't know how many times I've said this, but like I'm just not much of a trailer guy. It looks like a trailer, and it is a red band. They do have F-bombs and blood and whatnot, but I think that as a trailer, it's a little weird that it seems to be just telling you the premise of what the Suicide Squad is. And I mean, I think that's a strange choice to kind of do because we've already had a Suicide Squad movie that a lot of people did watch. I mean, it was awful, and most people nowadays will not admit to liking it. But, I mean, it was kind of popular, and I think most people are familiar with what the premise of Suicide Squad is. So when they're saying, all right, you get 10 years off your life sentence if you do a job, you get an explosive in your head.
You don't need to establish the premise again. That movie made a lot of money regardless of how it was received. Like,
yes, exactly. And like, so that's why, like, as a trailer, it was a little like, okay, I don't know about that. But it does look like James Gunn has a nice handle on who all the characters are. I think John Cena as Peacemaker looks just like the best. He has some good moments in there, and they sort of have a reveal of who a villain might be that has me just really, really excited. I don't know if you've heard about it. Maybe the chat's going to spoil it now, but it's pretty cool.
I haven't. I don't mind if you want to tell me about it because I should have done my homework. I forgot all about it.
Starro.
And you know what? I had heard about that. No, I knew that. Yeah.
And it's like straight up comic book Starro.
Is it? That's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's giant.
Is it huge? That's exciting.
It's huge. And so they even like dropped the word like kaiju. Like it's a kaiju. And I have been watching through all of the Showa era Godzilla movies, so I am in like full on kaiju mode right now, and that got me pretty excited. So those are my thoughts on the trailer.
Well, thanks for doing that. Yeah, so that we can have some content about that because I forgot to look at it. Somebody asked me to look at it live and respond to it. I don't think I'm going to do that. We're already 25 minutes into the show. We should start taking some questions. I'll try to talk about it in another Captain Logan show later on, maybe. But yeah, like hopefully that gets me maybe a little bit more jazzed for it. I don't like James Gunn's early work that much. It's just not for me. Like, I think he's a good filmmaker. I think it's well executed. It's just not my thing. And everything about the way he's been talking about that movie and the actors have been talking about that movie tells me that it's more in line with that kind of stuff, with his with his slithers and his supers and stuff, than it is with his Guardians. Now, I've heard some people say that it's like a like more rated R Guardians, maybe. So people think that he's still more reined in than he was with his independent work. And if it's like that, maybe I'll appreciate it more. But even if it's more down like the level of Kick-Ass, like I like that movie. It's not my thing. You know what I mean? So I'm having a hard time getting excited about this. I think it's likely to be a good movie that I don't care about personally. So I don't know. I don't really want to sit here and respond to the trailer because people that are excited about it, I will have a likely different reaction than you will expect. It's not my thing. But I'll look at it later and try to respond to it.
Stallone is voicing King Shark.
I heard that. And, yeah.
King Shark looks awesome. he looks like a ton of fun.
There's a character that you didn't think that you would see in as many extra media things as you have in the last few years. He just keeps showing up and stuff.
I'm amazed we've seen more King Shark than Gorilla Grodd. Isn't that nuts to think about?
Like, you know what? It's not, though, because I think people, actually, at least like superhero fans and comic fans, got really burnt out on Gorilla Grodd, if nothing else, in cartoon shows. Like, we just could not get away from that character for the longest time. He's all over Batman Brave and the Bold. Like, God, I got sick of that character. Yeah, and I'm not like a. I don't find gorillas like inherently funny like a lot of people do. I don't know what it is about that. The only like I don't know, simian or primate villain that I ever thought was really fun or funny all by his lonesome was Mojo Jojo, and that had nothing to do with the fact that he was a monkey. It had everything to do with his personality, his voice. That character didn't have to be, and the fact that he's got a big brain that he just keeps underneath like a turban hat. Like he wouldn't have to be a monkey, and I would still think that was great. But
yeah, I recently rewatched the original King Kong, and I flippin' loved it. It's so good. Little me didn't have much taste, but he had enough taste to like King Kong. But it's just one of those things. I think like giant monkeys or like big monkeys or like apes or whatever. They're just a fun sci-fi thing you can do stuff with, and so I don't know. My brother is now like maining Donkey Kong and Smash, and it's always fun to be a big monkey and beat people up. So I like that.
Let me ask you this question. Does the fascination with genius monkeys or monkeys like experimented on in science fiction things come from the fact that we used to send monkeys into space?
Oh, yeah. I think it is that juxtaposition of like primitiveness versus like the future and like looking forward, and how those two are like on like the opposite sides of what we think of as like intelligence, and then we mash them with that. So I think it actually might go back to that space age thing.
Maybe it's connected to that in somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. So do you want to do some pre-written or some super chats?
Let's do it. Let's start with the first couple super chats, and then we'll go to pre-written, if you don't mind. We're gonna talk about whatever you guys want to now, guys. So if you need to go back to the Dr. Fate thing for any reason, feel free to do that. Otherwise, the sky is the limit. Let's let you guys direct the conversation. Go ahead, Mr. Connor.
All right. So speaking of James Gunn, well, kind of. First is a $5 super chat from CM Productions. Thank you for your $5 super chat. He says, "Where is Connor? Who is Connor? Why is Connor?"
Why is Connor? It's a good question.
Well, I'm in Portland, Oregon. I am me. Hello. And why am I? Well, because my parents loved each other, and I'm that result. So those are the questions. And so there you go. The second super chat.
Hey, Connor, how's Spencer doing?
He's doing really well. He's working at a comic book shop right now, and life seems to be going pretty well for him.
Oh,
so
yeah, you told me that. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, so he technically works for Dark Horse Comics, so that's pretty exciting.
Neat.
I don't know if he's working closer or further away from our apartment right now, but he might be listening to this on his commute if he is driving right now.
I keep feeling sorry for Dark Horse. It's amazing that they're enough in business they can employ people.
Yeah.
Considering all the properties they've lost in the last few years.
Right. But I think comic book shops up here, I think, are a little bit more secure than they are in other places in the country, because, I mean, this is like basically like what Hollywood is to the film industry, Portland is to the comic book industry. Like Matt Fraction, Bendis, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Jeff Parker, Matt Kint, Joshua Williamson, like they all live up here.
Yeah.
And like David Finch and like his wife Meredith Finch live up here. Like it's a pretty big economy, and I think Terry Dodson has like a box at like one of my brother's comic book shops. Yeah, it's a pretty bustling industry up here anyways. So
and see, we have quite a few like major creators in the immediate Midwest sector where I'm at. So like Kansas City has quite a few, but not as many major names as that one city does. But when you go out to like St. Louis and a couple places in Iowa, like in like a 500 mile radius, we've got quite a bit right around here. But they're splintered. They're all, you know, it's like Jason Aaron lives here, but like we don't have nearly as many as you do. Jason Aaron goes to my comic shop. I've talked to him many times.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's why he was in my documentary. He would just happen to be at the shop when we were interviewing customers that night, and I got him. And I had some conversations with him before, and we talked about interviewing at one point. So I was like, "Would you do the documentary?" He was like, "Yeah, sure." So got him on camera for 10 minutes.
Lewis Cox says, "I believe Dark Horse still has Hellboy." Well, that's because Mike Mignola created Hellboy for Dark Horse.
There'd be no reason for him to. Yeah, that can't get bought up by somebody else because they own it.
I think they also have like The Goon.
That's true.
The Mask, which I know you're a huge comic book Mask fan, so.
But they could do something with it. It's weird that they haven't tried to bring that back. It's kind of like Men in Black. It's like, why wouldn't you try?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised.
Why doesn't Marvel do something with Men in Black, or do they not even own it anymore? I'm not sure, but they bought it up at some point, and then. It wasn't even originally published there, and then they got their hands on it. Because it's weird. I think Marvel had the rights to it, and I don't think they've ever... Again, I don't know if they still have it. I don't know if they ever reprinted anything, but they... but I'm pretty sure the credits in the movie are like based on characters published by Marvel Comics, but they weren't originally published there, I don't think.
Was that just like they had like gotten the imprint or something?
I think so.
Okay. Because that's a whole thing with like, you know, technically, Art Red and like The Losers, they're DC movies, but like Red is like I think the Wildstorm imprint, and like The Losers was at that point like associated with Vertigo, which then, you know, it's all kind of interesting. But the next super chat comes from 55900 ERS.
Get used to it. It just rolls off the tongue. Thanks, man.
I've heard DJ say it plenty of times.
Many times. Yes.
Many times. He gives us a $1.99 super chat. Thank you very much for your donation. 5590 ERS. And he asks, what is your favorite event comic?
What is your favorite event comic, Connor?
I'll have to think about that because I don't read a whole lot of event comics. What I read was when I was reading a lot of like new comics during the New 52 era, so no one's gonna like my answer, so I'll have to think about any I like. So
one of the big ones for me is AVX, Adventures versus X-Men. You don't get a lot better than that. I really like the second Secret Wars, partly because I was surprised that I liked it as much as I did, and then it ended up not being the pseudo reboot that they played it as. It was almost too conservative in how little it changed after that event, but it was really fun kind of redoing all the events in like a almost closing down a multiverse in a DC Crisis kind of way, where you splintered off a bunch of these different universes, but put them all on the same universe, on the same ground, with just literal physical walls up between them, where if somebody knew that, and they all thought they were in different universes, but if you somehow knew about it, you could climb the wall and go over to the next one. So like you might be in old Secret Wars or in old, or in like AVX or something, and you could like climb the wall and show up in Civil War or something. It was great, and there were a couple that did that. And I liked that event a lot because there were some events that they did better than the originals. So like I wasn't a big fan of their Infinity Gauntlet, but I loved their Civil War. It was so much better.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have read Final Crisis, which is like Tenet as a comic book.
It's insane.
Where it's completely nuts, and from what I understand, it's sort of like Grant Morrison writing and ending to the Fourth World stuff that Jack Kirby had started. And I have not read any of that stuff. And when I started Final Crisis for the first time, I was like, I don't know about this. And then it was somewhere in the Superman Beyond tie-in where I was like, I feel like I am like within an atom's width of like just completely losing it. And then right when I had been like burnt that far down, I all of a sudden got it. I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. And then from that point on, I was like, I'm really into this. It's weird. It makes almost no sense. You have to like rack your brain every page wondering what on earth is going on. But once I kind of got through it, I really liked Final Crisis, even though I know a lot of people hate it, and I completely understand why.
Well, and at the time, it would be interesting to check back with people from years ago when that came out and have them revisit it and see what they think now, because tensions were kind of high over the aftermath of Final Crisis, almost more than the book itself, right? Because a lot of people weren't happy about the Dick Grayson as Batman thing. And I think a lot of people hated it just because it led us to the death of Batman.
Mm-hmm. And I remember I saw an article that was like the 10 worst like DC storylines or whatever, and it was somebody being like reacting very strongly to Grant Morrison because like half of that list was 2007 through 2010 Grant Morrison stuff, and it was like Grant Morrison systematically destroys the DC universe Part 1, Batman R.I.P. Grant Morrison systematically destroys the DC universe Part 2, Final Crisis. Like they hated his stuff, but right now a lot of people looking back think that's like their favorite era of DC, and I really like that stuff. So I think there's a tendency of when a lot of comic book stuff is happening right now, people are just they froth and they can't understand why this is happening. And I think the most recent example of that was like Hydra Captain America, where that happened and people were like losing their mind, and I'm thinking, okay guys, in like 3 years it'll all go back to normal. And guess what happened? 3 years later, everything was back to normal.
We knew it would, but that's a horse of a different color because that event also sucked. Like, because I started that and I was really behind it, and I was like, look, guys, it's just a story we're telling. You should know that we're not changing Captain America to a Nazi for all time, partly because comics. Like, duh. But also because the inception of that idea was time has been altered so that that was the case all along. It wasn't a straight-up retcon, and it was obvious that at some point time would get altered back. Like, it's a time travel story, kind of, or at least a time-altering kind of thing. But then it was... that was Spencer, and everybody's loved his Spider-Man, but that event was not very well liked. A lot of people hated it on principle. I was going with it for the first couple issues, and then it just got bad. Like just the writing in that book got awful. It got weirdly melodramatic. And I mean melodramatic for comics. Like it was difficult to read. Fear itself I like. I haven't read it in a long time, but and I mean when we talk about event comics, like that's kind of a loose thing. I guess I'm going immediately more to the big giant intercompany crossovers. If you're counting things like R.I.P. as events, obviously my favorite events of all time remain Death of Superman and No Man's Land. But I was going to more of the, kind of standard intercompany things, which we have to do twice a year now. And sometimes you'll read one and you don't even know if it's like an A1 or a B1 until you're farther in, where it's like, is this like a big major one that everybody's supposed to be reading? And then you realize, oh, the company isn't sure. They're waiting to see how the numbers go. That's the sense I get with those. I like Blackest Night a lot, too, as a novelty. I don't think it's like a great book or anything, but I go back to that every now and again. It's a lot of fun to read. I still like to complain that I never have a sense of place in that book. It's always just black backgrounds. I have no idea where anybody ever is in that. It's just black backgrounds filled with zombies. It's hilarious. But anyway, those are a few. Somebody meant Axis was really good. That event that was that Remender event that was kind of the big wrap up for Uncanny Avengers a few years ago. That one's pretty good too. Anyway, somebody mentioned, so I was talking earlier about Men in Black, and I was remembering that wrong. It's just been so long since I've looked into that. Lewis Cox mentioned that was Malibu, and Malibu was a Marvel imprint in the first place. I forgot it was Malibu that did that. I just remembered that it was listed as Marvel in that movie, and I thought that was very strange. I guess they were just like, that's a name more people recognize, so we're not going to put in the imprint. But I still don't know why that stuff hasn't been reprinted more.
Yeah, you'd think that anytime one of those, like the great MIB International, Men in Black 3, you'd think like they would reprint that stuff like when the movies come out at least, but I go to a comic book shop every week and I never see that on the shelf.
More you'd think that they would just integrate it into mainline continuity at that point, because Marvel's got all kinds of, and DC does too, but Marvel's got all kinds of characters and groups and things that aren't straight up superhero things that still exist in that same universe. There's no reason Men in Black could not exist. And well, I say that. Maybe not. Everybody knows about aliens. So I guess that wouldn't really work.
Okay, Men in Black exists on another galaxy that's a lot like Earth, where people don't know about aliens, and
so the whole thing's just a what-if comic? Okay.
Basically.
That would work. Okay, what else you got?
Do we want to keep going down the super chat lane or jump on over?
Let's go over to a pre-written, shall we?
All right. Mutale Mwanenchiku asks, Cap, thoughts on Russell Crowe cameoing in Thor Love and Thunder, rumored to be playing Zeus?
So I had not heard that. Russell Crowe's name in anything never gives me confidence for the project, because that's an actor who will be in anything and tends to pick really crappy projects. He is also in good things, but it doesn't. And I mean, obviously, a cameo is not gonna make me excited about a movie anyway. But every time I hear Russell Crowe's name, I'm like, okay, so this could go either way. It's Russell Crowe in a movie. But also, if it does end up being Zeus, that's interesting, because that means that they're opening up to different pantheons.
Yeah.
Like that would be interesting. I mean, and maybe that would, Connor, be the place to do it, where you've got, the Norse pantheon opening up and being like, hey, there's these other, pantheons of gods or relative gods, and maybe we finally do, Hercules and characters like that.
Oh, Mutali says I pronounced his last name correctly. So
score.
Yeah,
good job. Yeah, I never go for his last name. That was that was a risk that paid off, Connor. Well done, sir.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that
Matthew Patton says Hercules is a huge Thor supporting character in the comics. Yeah, he does show up there. I just didn't expect the MCU to ever broach that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know where they're going to go with the gods stuff, because I kind of saw Ragnarok as a way of just kind of, okay, that didn't get as much attention as we liked, so we're just going to clean the table off, and we're going to do Ragnarok, and now all the gods are dead, and okay, whatever.
It would be weird. That's a good point. It'd be weird if suddenly they went that way and cared about that stuff, given that they intentionally put the Asgardians on Earth so they didn't have to deal with it anymore.
Rohith Dahar says it makes sense since Gore the God Butcher is the main villain, and it would be weird if he's the villain and he's got no gods to kill since Ragnarok already happened. So I think, yeah, that does make sense as like if we're going to go into a different pantheon, that's maybe how you do that.
Too bad Gore could have done some of that, but then I wouldn't have wanted him in that movie. But if Love and Thunder is anything like Ragnarok, I also don't want Gore in this movie. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Boy, Connor, I know I've said this before, but that is the first MCU movie where I've ever felt like I kind of... There's a part of me, as if I wasn't doing this job, there's a part of me that would, like, send in agents to see the movie first and tell me how it is before I would even bother watching it. Like, I don't want to see that movie. Oops, sorry about that. I don't want to see that movie. I will, because I do this, and hopefully... like I always say, like if I make myself go see a thing, I will be open-minded and hope that I end up liking it. I gave the Snyder Cut a green sign flip, regardless of all the things I made fun of with that. Like I still enjoyed it overall. So anything is possible, Connor. But the difference is, BVS was a really polarizing thing that didn't make the money that they wanted. Ragnarok was this giant phenomenon that I thought was god-awful. So, like, there's no reason for them to change their to change lanes with that at all. Like, because the last thing they made, that was very popular. So, like, there's no reason to change modes.
Yeah, I think that of all the movies they announced during that big, before they announced what the TV series were going to be, they talked about the movies that they had announced for Phase 4, and I think Thor: Love and Thunder is my most anticipated of those that they announced.
Okay.
I know that's
to each his own, buddy.
In this corner, it's not exactly a very popular opinion, but I think like Thor Ragnarok was like they had a premise ready to go, and then they announced Taika Waititi as the director, and I was like, oh, what? And then that movie, like the first act of that movie is just them kind of clearing the table of all the Thor stuff that they had up until that point so that they could just set all their toys in a new playing field. And then they also wanted to do Ragnarok. And I feel like now that the old Thor, like aesthetic and supporting cast and all that's kind of been wiped clean, we can now just kind of do their own thing. And I know that for people who probably enjoy Thor comics, they're not excited for that at all. But I'm just curious to see how Taika Waititi will do. Of the Waititi,
I wish he would stop adapting great epic stuff I like, because that's not what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he's doing gore and he does that anything like the way Ragnarok was, he's going to do the same thing to that material.
Yeah, probably.
And Jason Aaron is looking at the material that I think Waititi really botched in Ragnarok with his run too. So like,
yeah. I think of all the Waititi films I've seen, that one's probably my least favorite. But hey, I'm in a wait and see mode for that. But I understand why others are in a covering their face in anticipation of dread sort of mode. All right. Another pre-written comes from Daniel Davis. He asks, if you disagree with somebody on something, do you respect their opinion if they provide an actual reason, or are you okay more with them just giving a one-word reason as to why?
Read that one more time.
All right.
Make sure that I've got all parts of that.
If you disagree with somebody on something, do you respect their opinion if they provide an actual reason, or are you more okay with them just giving a one-word reason as to why?
No, I mean, of course, it just depends on what it is we're talking about. If we're having an actual conversation about a thing, I'd like to have a conversation. So, I mean, yeah, you want to support your points. I don't think everybody's entitled to an opinion, but that doesn't make every opinion valid. Those are two different things. So a person can have a really, not at all thought out, not based on anything, opinion that is just their initial gut response to a thing. And that may not be, a valid opinion. But I like to, I don't know, it's an interesting question because it kind of suggests that you might be thinking some people, just are avoiding conflict and don't want to, and are afraid of getting into some kind of a fight or something. Like, of course I'm always going, like, I'm going to respect people in general. Like I said, everybody is, I'm going to respect people coming to a different place than I might, because everybody's different. Everybody has a different background. Even if somebody comes to an opinion that I think is unfounded, unwarranted, not based really in any fact or anything, I can respect how they might have gotten there without spending any time researching a thing or looking at it or whatever. You got to look at everything on a case by case. I'm not immediately going to start, throwing shade at a person or, screaming at them because, you have this really ignorant opinion. There's ignorant opinions are not valid, but it's valid that a person would come to them before they've had a chance to look at something. If a person refuses to look at facts or just insist that they're right when you know they're not, and they just won't look at your information, that's dumb. That's not fair. Yeah, I can't respect that. But I'm not going to avoid confrontation either. So I'm not going to respect an opinion more just because I don't know what it is, and I don't want to get into the conversation. Like, I don't really understand that. I don't understand, like, I would respect it more if they gave me a one-word answer. Why would I respect that more? I don't necessarily disrespect that, but I very often need more information to get how a person got to a thing.
Yeah, when
it's kind of an odd way to phrase that.
Daniel talks about some disagreeing with somebody on something. There are plenty of things to disagree on. Some I'm a little bit more like hard on than others. But when it comes to, like, I'm just gonna go with, like, say, art, for example. Like, if we're talking comics, movies, TV, books, whatever, it's really interesting having discussions about it because I know that depending on who I'm talking to, I don't know how into whatever they're reading or watching or whatever is, and so. And because art is, like, so built around your experience with something, that for example, like, I heard your review of The Social Network, and you were talking about things with that movie I had never heard anybody really talking about with that movie, and I'm like, oh, so that's why people like that movie. Cool. That's nothing like my experience with that, because I focus on just certain things about that movie that make me just really not like it for whatever reason, even though I understand that it is, like, very well made and the dialogue is effective and pretty solid on paper. It's just in the execution and the way it all materializes that I just don't really have a response to that movie. And so I'm more interested if somebody disagrees with me, I'm more interested in hearing their experience with it and how they came to the conclusion that they came to. So I find that really exciting because it helps me actually know the person I'm talking to better, just in terms of how, because art is all kind of built on you bringing your experience to a piece and how it, you experience it. So I don't know. Discussion about that is all interesting to me. And so, but depending on how somebody wants to talk about it, sometimes with some people I know, I'd be more okay if they gave me a one-word response.
That's fair, but in that case, I really don't want to engage those people anyway.
That's true. That's true.
You know what I mean? At that point, the respect question becomes something of a different question, where it's like, if a person is, like, closed off enough where everybody has to think exactly the way they do about everything, and they're obsessed with consensus, I'm just not really interested in having a conversation with that person. That may sound awful, but I think that's a big problem right now. Let me throw that out real quick too. I'm not that interested in consensus. And that's a thing that a lot of people are, and I get why some people get to this place too, but I think it's, I think it's a thing that we need to be more careful about, and folks need to be like more willing to challenge people and be not just open-minded, but also not too afraid to formulate their own opinions, have your own brain. I think that's really important. I'm always preaching critical thinking. I think it's really important. And so what happens is people want the whole world to be simple and consistent, and it's never going to be that way. It's just not the world we live in. Life isn't fair. We should be as fair as we can to individuals on an individual level. But not everybody is going to think the way you do, and that's okay. We don't have human progress if everybody thinks exactly the same way, even if it's what you look at as the best way to be thinking. Ergo, I'm not interested in 99% on Rotten Tomatoes necessarily. Sometimes if a movie is that good, I get how we got there. I get why so many people love a thing. But if I really, really like a thing that the majority of people aren't interested in, that's interesting to me, and I'm curious about it. And I'm not going to say that sometimes doesn't befuddle me to the point of feeling kind of weird about it or being kind of sad about it for a minute. But at the end of the day, I'm much more interested in being, open-minded, broad-minded, listen to different ideas than I am. We all need to be like, one people when it comes to thinking the same way about, specifically when we're talking about entertainment and fiction and stuff. Because I think there's also this obsession, Connor, with everything needing to be. Did we lose Connor?
Am I back?
Are you there?
Yes.
There you
yes,
go.
I'm here.
I think we're also obsessed, Connor, with this idea that everything has to be accessible and everything must be for everybody, and that's wrong. That's just incorrect. Sorry, it is. There should be different. It should be okay to make a variety of different things for different people.
Yeah, and like that's one of those things where I also try to be open-minded. Like I understand that not everything is for everybody. So when a lot of people didn't really like Tenet, I mean, I get it. Like I really liked it, and like the more I've watched it, the more I've actually kind of seen more in it. And like I didn't actually give it enough credit when we talked about it in that review. I think there absolutely is like a meta filmmaker like message that is like woven within that movie. I just didn't see it, and I know a lot of people just don't really like it, but I get it because the way it's kind of put together is really inaccessible, and specifically for people who will watch that movie multiple times and who are interested in watching it multiple times. And a lot of people just don't really want to do that, and I get that. But yeah, when it comes to consensus, like I think it is an interesting tool, but I don't think it is an authority.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think it's the end of the world when something is polarizing. I think it says something about us these days that so many things are as polarizing as they are. Because I think that there's a lot of things that come out now. If they were exactly the same way they are right now and came out 20 years ago, they would not be as polarizing. I think some of that comes from the way that we are socially and politically divided. That we tend to. I think a lot of people tend to look for different things in fiction and entertainment in general than they used to. Also. I think it's hard to nail down just was I entertained by that thing. I think there's a lot of other factors that people care about than they used to, whether they come to it naturally or whether they come to it because they've been kind of conditioned by the culture that I'm supposed to look for these things. No, man, liking what you like is okay. You can do that. Mutale, you made a good point. He says it can be hard to be the only one who likes something and no one else does. But I mean that's a broader extreme kind of thing. Like, yeah, I totally agree with that. It sucks if you don't have other people to share something with, but there's also pros and cons to everything. And this is a thing that Eric and I have talked about a lot, that he's even more passionate about than I am. The idea of something getting so popular that it becomes watered down and it's not for the people it used to be for. And that happens, and that for him has certainly happened with the MCU and some other comic book things. And just, geek culture in general. It blew up so hard that now it's for the masses and it becomes less for him. Not because it's popular and too many people like it. It's not that Eric's being an elitist about it. And I feel this way too to some degree, just not as hard as I think he does sometimes. But it's a matter of the actual material being, in his mind, watered down because it's for a broader audience, and so it's more safe, it's more careful, it's not taking the risks it used to, it's not pushing the envelopes it used to. So there's pros and cons to everything. Sometimes it is kind of nice to be one of the only people in the room that really care about a thing. I think it's fun that there's not a giant tick fandom, and I'm a huge fan of that, because it's still a niche enough thing that people are interested in my interest in it. Here's the thing I never cared about. Why are you so obsessed with this thing? Well, let me tell you. That's fun. I enjoy that. And so there's pros and cons to everything. Sometimes it is fun for a thing not to be insanely popular, or even for a lot of people to not like it when you like it. That can be fun.
Yeah, and I think that like with this like division and like engagement. Okay, there's the internet. That's the big thing, right? The internet is like the big factor. It has allowed people to communicate a lot quicker, a lot more. Your people are discussing everything at all times of the day, all over the world. And then I think that because the internet allows for more engagement in all of its platforms and all of this, websites and all of the forums, it then allows for, I think, a little bit more division, because I know people, like, behavior is kind of consistent where if you, for example, if I don't like something, that a lot of people in my life really like, I then seek out people who also dislike it, so that I can at least have my opinion validated in some way. This is a very common thing you see. And then that community of people who don't like something then, become discussing all of that. And then people who do go into their bubble. And I think that the way agreement and disagreement tend to be engaged, they're engaged differently through how those communities are fostered. And so it's just, I don't know. I think the way in which being divisive on the internet is weird, and how like that communication operates in its own isolated community versus how like the two sides engage with one another.
I don't know that it's good that we're putting ourselves into groups based on sometimes based on our like or dislike for a very specific thing. That's a little bit different, I think, than like it's not necessarily always bad, but it does feel kind of isolating, right? Like it seems like before the internet became the internet, before social media got the way it was, even on the internet, we tended to form into groups based on our more general likes of things. So it used to be, I like Star Trek, so I'm with these people that want to talk about Star Trek, and we can all, within the vein of Star Trek, like discuss our likes and dislikes of particular episodes and movies, etc., etc. Now it's I like this particular Star Trek movie, and I don't like this particular Star Trek movie, and although it's more that way obviously with wars these days, so this becomes kind of an absurd thing because we are divided this way with new Trek. Certainly, I think there is like a new Trek versus old Trek thing going on right now, because one of these things is Star Trek and the other one isn't. It's just how I feel about it. But as an absurd example, let's say you had the same thing you did with Star Wars, right? Where you had like, let's say back in the day you had social media the way it was, and for whatever reason you had like a small contingency of really passionate Nemesis fans that would like fight the First Contact fans, like no, our movie is better than your movie, or it's just as good, you people are crazy. That wouldn't have happened back in '02, but it may have happened now. I don't know. And Connor, I don't know that that's good. I don't know that it's good that we're dividing ourselves up into groups especially based on disliking a thing. Let's all band together and be the people that hate this thing. I don't know about that. I don't know that that's doing us any favors culturally.
I mean, I know it's not doing us any favors. There are some YouTube channels that I am like, I legitimately wonder if it's like an elaborate like troll. Like, okay, no one can be this transparently mean-spirited, right? Like, right? Is this a joke? I don't know if it is or not. I don't want to get into like specifics or anything, but yeah, there's some. I just don't
want to necessarily bond with people too much over things like that. Like I don't think it's unhealthy to find like a person or two where it seems like the whole universe has gone mad because they love this thing, and you don't understand it because you think it's like legitimately really poorly written or didn't make any sense or whatever it is we're talking about. There's a lot of things I can name, obviously, where I'm just like, I don't get why people love this thing. I don't get why people love BVS. I don't get why people loved, the last couple more recent Star Wars films. I don't get that. But at the same time, I don't think it's helpful to like band together against people that like a thing you don't like. I just don't see what the point is of that.
Yeah, because at that point we're just like, come on, guys, we're talking about movies.
Yeah,
let's. Come on, guys. Let's be.
And I don't want to be. And the thing is, when you say that, it's hard to not come off like you're dismissive. Where, because people will use that, saying that, Connor, as like cannon fodder against you. Where it's like, okay, so you love a thing and you're passionate about it when when you're talking to a person that agrees with you, but as soon as somebody goes, man, I hate that movie, you go, well, it's just movies. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But that's not what you're doing. That's not the.
Yeah, no. Like what I'm talking is like for example, I've been watching through all of the Godzilla, like early Godzilla movies, and like I think an entertaining human story in those absolutely matters. It's not just about guys in rubber suits hitting each other.
Sure,
that's wonderful. But like I think that there is like something there, and a lot of people just go, I don't want Citizen Kane. I'm like, I don't want Citizen Kane either, but I want to be entertained, and so that's why I think some of those are better than others. But like hold on. Oh man, sorry. I think my train of thought got derailed a little bit there. But no, what I'm saying is like I think that I'm not trying to just like dismiss conversation by saying we're just talking about movies, but I think like there's like certain conversations people want to be having that don't really concern movies, but they want to use movies as like a way of getting there.
Yep.
And so, I think,
and it's so complicated because arguably, well, I don't even think arguably. I think we can argue about which movies are doing this. But let me just say it this way: there is the perception with whatever particular movies we're talking about, particularly big major blockbusters, that maybe think that they can draw a crowd based on their political persuasion or cultural identity or whatever. Where the perception is this movie is more political even than it is in entertainment, and whether you like it, like your interest in it tells us something about your cultural identity. And that's bad.
yes, I absolutely agree.
Like the fact that we're starting to go, if you don't like this, or starting to, for several years we've been doing this. If you like this, it must mean you lean this way, or it must mean that you must have these particular ideals. And if you like this other thing, it must mean you have these particular ideals. And what makes it very complicated is, like I was trying to say, arguably there are a lot of movies that are also playing into that and doing it on purpose.
Well, and I think more so.
And even if they're not, the perception is that they are.
And I think the reason the perception is there is because of how film is promoted right now. They understand that like people associated with product understand that being provocative gets attention, and you can be any kind of provocative. Like for example, I remember like Captain Marvel was supposed to ruin the Marvel universe with feminism. However, you watch that movie and it's like a very agreeable message about colonialism's kind of bad. Yeah, okay, so was Black Panther, so was Thor Ragnarok, so was there. It was like a really normie message. It wasn't that radical of a film. And then once the movie came out, everyone kind of realized that, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of videos about Captain Marvel all of a sudden went away. But it's like, I just think it's interesting that, but because they knew, if we...
Could we at the very least wait until the movie comes out before we do that crap? At the very least?
Absolutely.
Even if that's how you feel about that, why don't you watch it first? Why don't you stop predicting what the politics of a movie are going to be until it comes out? And you know what? I'm going to be extreme enough to say, even if all of the actors and the director and the writers involved in a movie are talking about it like like that is the message, I still think you ought to wait and see the movie and just see how much of it is really there. Because sometimes that's just a tactic. Sometimes it's just a selling thing. And sometimes it's also actors in a movie wanting to think that they're in something more important than they are, so they'll play that stuff way up. Like don't trust actors. They're there to do a job. They're a piece of the thing. Yes, they're human beings, but for the sake of the movie, they're just another tool. Don't trust them. They didn't write the thing. They didn't get it greenlit.
Absolutely. You're preaching it. Yes. So I think that like that's one of those things where whenever I hear people say, well, did you hear that, this or this person said this or that person said that? I'm like, look, they're just trying to sell their movie. No matter what interview, no matter what statement, there's an element of marketing engaged in all things when somebody attached to a project is publicly talking about something. So I don't know. We have been talking about this for a very long time.
Let's go ahead and get into some more super chats. Yeah, we could have made this the show. But thanks for talking that out with me, Connor. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we were able to talk about that. And hold on.
Real fast. Let me say one more thing about that. As I'm reading this this chat, Senior Nerd I just wrote. Just kind of do this ranting thing. Like, I like this thing, internet. Why do you like this thing? I hate you. You're so stupid, but I don't like this thing, internet. How dare you not like this thing? I love this thing. I hate you. Yeah, that's what the internet is like. And I think it's important to note that the internet also turns everybody into a superhero or a supervillain, meaning that we all have an alternate persona now. And sometimes we probably wear our internet persona too much in real life. But what I mean is, we're not the same people online that we are in real life. And people that think that social media is the same thing as the real world need to just stop it, because people do not act the same way in public with other people as they do on the internet, and but it also affects your psyche, it affects your psychology. And I keep wondering, I go this far, Connor, I keep wondering if social media itself, if we keep letting it go the direction it's going, can single-handedly by itself change the human condition.
I think for people who are being like people my little brother's age, it might already be doing that. I'm very curious to have.
A little scary.
It is.
It's a great tool, but we just need to use it more responsibly, man. Like all those science fiction novels in the 50s and 60s predicted this and were horrified about it, and they tried to steer us clear of it. Over reliance of technology, understanding the thing that we're using before we're using it, and we did not get the message.
Yeah, no. There are a few examples that I was able to do a case study on regarding this, and I've developed. Dr. Nielsen here has developed a new diagnosis here. It is called man who lives on the internet syndrome.
Yeah.
And this or woman or non-binary or whatever, person who lives on the internet syndrome is a real thing, and like it's legitimately crazy how much, like, I understand to a certain degree, like communication is a part of the real world, and so to a degree, like the internet is a part of our real world,
right? Yes.
But it isn't. But it is not the real world.
No,
and it is crazy that some people...
at the point that it is, it's because we changed it.
That's true. Yeah.
At the point that you can say that, it's the bridge too far, because it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, and I also want to throw this out there. It's okay to like think critically about something and understand that it's not good, but you can still like it.
Of course.
Like. That's how I feel about this little movie right here, Wonder Woman 1984. There are scenes of that movie I completely unironically enjoy watching.
Yeah, same here. Sure.
And after that movie came out, there was like a lot of like social.
There are also scenes I ironically enjoy.
Absolutely, and so like when it comes to like that movie, like there was a lot of cultural critique afterwards talking about like problematic elements. I'm like, oh yeah, those are absolutely there. Still like it. Sorry, I kind of like it, but it's not maybe not a good movie, but like I still enjoy it, on a lizard brain kind of level. I don't know. You can like different things for different reasons, and I don't know. That's something I would kind of wanted to throw out there.
No, I'm glad you did. Let's move on, shall we? What else we got? Well, I say let's move on, and then I'm seeing some super chats that are still about this, which is fine, but we'll still tackle them in order. Well, you know what? You're the moderator. We'll tackle them in whatever order you decide to throw them at me.
I generally have a first come first serve mentality.
That's fine. DJ does it differently, but you feel free, because that's the way I usually do it as well.
Well, I can't.
He likes to make life hard on himself. It's why we pay him the big bucks.
Yeah, that's true. That's why he's the permanent moderator. I'm like the substitute teacher. All right, I let you guys get away with a little bit more, but I'm nowhere near as good as the person who's actually has this job.
No, you're selling yourself short, because if you were a substitute teacher, you would walk in and just play a video.
I've recorded just like a very broad general answer that could like apply to almost anything. I just play that for every answer.
Or we would just be watching like a 90s IMAX movie about whales or something.
That's true. All right, let's get into super chats. Daddy Longlegs sends us a $5 super chat. Thank you for the $5, Daddy Longlegs. They ask, would you be opinion to checking out the first 3 episodes of Invincible?
I want to watch Invincible. I'll do that eventually. I haven't gotten to it yet. I just haven't had time to watch new TV just to watch it. And if I was going to do that, I would want to review it right away, and I just haven't had time to get to it. So I will try to do that at some point. I kind of wanted to read some of that book first, but I don't know if I'm going to get to that.
Yeah, they have those compendiums. I also want to read some of that book, but the art looks, or the animation style looks very faithful to the comic, and so I do want to check it out.
I saw the trailers; it looks great. Yeah,
I hear it's very faithful because apparently it is very violent and very R-rated.
And I do appreciate that they're selling it that way. When you see all the banners and things on Amazon, you got like a guy with a bloody face. Like they're making sure people know what that is, and that it's not intended for children and stuff. So that's good because sometimes we're not careful enough about that with animation, and we still have enough of a. And this won't go away for a few generations, I don't think, Connor. We still have enough of a mentality in this country of cartoons are for children. I mean, The Simpsons has been on for 31 years and we still haven't gotten away from that mentality. I mean, it's crazy. Oh, well, it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
Surely that's okay for kids. Does not matter what you put on screen. People are going to... And in a day and age where we probably have as many adult cartoons as we do children's cartoons, or at least half as many. Oh, hi, DJ. DJ's there in the comments.
DJ jumped on in. He said, my sub history teacher in high school showed us National Treasure, and first night...
He told me about it. I think he mentioned that to me once, yeah. If you're wondering why DJ's in the comments, but he's not here, he's either still on his way back from a vacation he took, or he just finally got back, but he was on the road all afternoon.
Well, safe travels, DJ. I hope it's all been good for you. All right, so... Yeah, you're right. It is kind of weird that animation, even adult animation, is still seen as some kind of specialty. Like there's something here. It's not very commonplace.
But just in this country.
Yeah.
Maybe not just in this country, but there's other countries that don't have that.
Yeah, I was watching through all the Studio Ghibli movies last year, or I guess year before. Sorry, 2020 was the Mulligan year. In 2019, I watched through all the Studio Ghibli movies, and you think, oh, it's animated, it's for kids, right? You know, like Disney got the license for these, and they're all ages, but there were some of those movies where I was like, man, a kid would be bored watching this. I mean, a kid can watch this, but it is very much like older kind of audience.
And some of those are really heavy with subject matter, so even if you're not going to give a kid nightmares, it's either going to go over his head, or it's, like you said, he'll get bored, or if he does get it, he's going to be like... depressed for the next week, because those get really heavy. What was your favorite of those? Because I've only seen a handful, but I've never seen that one.
That movie, like, I'm not a fantasy person inherently, but that movie is epic, sweeping, really cool. Has a really good dub, by the way. Billy Crudup doing the main guy. He does a really good job. It is so thoughtful, and while it does, like, very unsubtly tackle certain subject matter, it's very classy and elegant and sophisticated and so beautifully animated.
That's how I would describe all of those that I've seen 5 or 6, and I have to look at a list to remind myself of titles, but God, what was the one? There's one that I just absolutely loved. There was a real science fiction heavy one that was set in a
Nausicaa?
Say it again. Nausicaa. Thank you. It was something in the Valley of the Wind. Yeah. God, that movie. I need to see that again. I loved that with a passion. I thought it was wonderful.
By the way, my number 2 though is a 70-minute or 1 hour and 16-minute television film that they did that did not get any distribution until 2016. It was released in the early 90s. This doesn't even have a dub. That's how but it's called Ocean Waves.
I've never heard of that.
This movie, I highly recommend it. It like broke and warmed my heart. So good.
Wow. Okay, but did you like Nausicaa? I have to know if you like that movie.
I really like Nausicaa, and what I find the most interesting about that movie is that it's sort of like, I mean, it was Miyazaki's first film, and it was before Studio Ghibli was officially established, and so it is kind of like his it's like his Reservoir Dogs or his Following, where it's his first movie. It's not quite refined, but like all of the things that will be in the rest of his films are
in there,
and and it's really cool. And and I really like the world and like the design of everything. It's really cool.
It also has a really good English dub.
Yes, it does.
That was done like 10 years after it or something. Because I think was Patrick Stewart in that? I think he was. There's several voices you'd recognize because they didn't record it until like 97, 98 or something.
Yeah. Because Disney got the license for all those movies.
That's what it was.
And then like they shelled out the big bucks for those dubs. Apparently all of them are great except for their dub of My Neighbor Totoro, because apparently people find the kids dub in that annoying. I don't know. I thought they sounded like kids, but whatever.
Kids are annoying.
Anyway, well, that's true.
Just in general.
They got Elle and Dakota Fanning to voice the kids. And I think that was the novelty.
Okay.
But
Connor's review. They sound like children to me.
Like but yeah, no. My Neighbor Totoro is really, really good.
Dan Davis said that was actually his second movie. He made something called Castle of Cagliostro, which I've never heard of.
Oh, I've actually not seen that or heard that. Interesting.
Interesting.
I have not seen their latest movie, Earwig and the Witch, which is on HBO Max. It's the first 3D animated movie. It's the third movie by Goro Miyazaki. Goro Miyazaki this is his third movie. Apparently, it's not good. I'm really nervous of watching it because it's 3D animated. But his first movie was Tales from Earthsea, which far and away the worst Ghibli movie. It's sort of like him trying to do Princess Mononoke and kind of failing miserably. But his second movie, From Up on Poppy Hill, is quite good if you have not seen that.
Connor, my plan, just so you know, was to only read comments that were correcting you on things. That's my whole plan.
Okay.
I'm just reading correction comments.
Well, hey, I am full of faults, so please correct me, everybody.
Correct me too. I also said stupid things this evening. It's fine. Go ahead.
John Ty gives the $5 super chat. Thank you very much, John Ty.
By the way, I wasn't saying you said anything stupid. You just said a couple of like factually inaccurate things. My saying that the thing about Men in Black, that was dumb. I don't know how I didn't remember that was the Marvel imprint. I don't know how I forgot that.
How do you not know what Malibu Comics is?
I do know what Malibu Comics is. I just forgot they published that. Anyway.
I don't know. Malibu is a pretty big giant. If anybody could forget Malibu Comics, I mean, whoa. No, I don't know. Don't go hard on yourself.
It's a big deal, man.
It says Marvel. It says Marvel in anyways. So John Ty says, it must suck for Steve Rogers to know that the Sokovia Accords is still a thing, and the heroes seemingly being fine with it in the MCU.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's more likely that at this point he's just kind of written off the world. He went and lived his own life, and he's basically just sitting around waiting to die, I guess. It sounds awful, I know. I know that he's not planning on Chris Evans, that he's not planning on coming back at any point. That never means anything to me. I mean, I think anything is always possible. I think the possibility of him coming back at some point as an elderly man sitting behind a desk giving people, missions or something like for S.H.I.E.L.D. or SWORD or something is entirely plausible, even in just a cameo capacity at some point. But like, I would love to see that at some point. So like, I don't really mean that. I think Steve Rogers would probably at some point have a hard time not getting involved, depending on what happened in the world. But yeah, as far as so yeah, he would probably be disappointed that they ultimately lost on that if they did. I think the verdict is still out on how much of the Sokovia Accords are still there and what exactly that looks like. I'm confused about this right now, to be perfectly honest with you. The way that's playing out in Falcon Winter Soldier. If I've missed something, I've missed something. Hopefully, I'll notice it again on rewatches. But right now, I'm like, I can't tell how much of that legislation is still there or even what exactly was passed. But as far as the idea of the heroes just being okay with it, I mean, if you were operating in a world where that had been there for a while, what do? You either hang it up or you go along with it. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, I think the thing you're right, with the Sokovia Accords, it's hard
or you'd be a Daredevil or a Punisher or something. I mean, those are your options.
Yeah. It's just kind of strange because there is so much content coming out for the MCU that it's kind of hard to remember what movies have the information.
Yeah.
And whenever we do broach the Sokovia Accords, it's always minimally, and it's always, this is a thing in the Sokovia Accords. We don't actually know what the legislation looks like. Not that I want that, but like, to like sit down for an hour and have somebody explain everything about the Sokovia Accords. But it does seem like it's a quick fix of, why can't this character do that? Because the Sokovia Accords.
But we're giving them too much credit if we assume that Feige and the MCU has like a fully written out like set of laws for that and knows exactly how it works right now. That does not seem to be the case. And like there are folks that just keep up with this and have more time than I do, or are able to keep up with it better than I do. So like anytime this kind of thing comes up, somebody will point to like one offhanded line that was in one movie for like 10 seconds. We're like, well, Cap, this explains everything. And I'm like, in fiction, when something really matters, you got to make it explicit enough that people can hang on to it, and we have to remember that this is and I'm not talking about hand holding. I'm talking about something being clearly not an obscure offhanded line that really matters to something, and that's very difficult to keep bringing back and putting on display right in front of you when it needs to be in an ongoing narrative like this. And so I sympathize with a collaboration of a bazillion writers all trying to keep all of this straight and present an ongoing narrative. But I think it's important to keep in mind, Connor, that it still is in one way a bunch of different stories, and in another way one constant ongoing narrative.
Yeah, that's the thing about it, that I feel like the MCU has done a really good job overall of kind of splitting it up as far as like bite-sized adventures and one ongoing story. But I feel like the Sokovia Accords is like the one big thing where that's the thing about it that I almost just kind of wish it would go away already, because it does seem to be this thing that kind of weighs down what people necessarily might want to do with a story. And I feel like, if we didn't do the Sokovia Accords and that was just gone, it might be easier to like just have Falcon doing whatever he wants to do, doing Falcon stuff.
Yeah.
But because we need to go, he's a private contractor who's working with this, we kind of have to like, there's like red tape there that your mind has to like jump around in order to get it straight. Not that they didn't think it through, they have the explanation there, but just as far as they want to get to the story and we have to like take a minute, stop, get around Sokovia Accord for a second, then go. And so it's like this little obstacle.
No, that's a wonderful point, Connor, because, and this will be the last thing I'll say about this, Guardians both fixed and ruined everything. Because it like drew the curtain back, and it gave us the cosmic stuff, and it made the MCU able to go to much more fun, zany, whimsical comic book places. It also makes me more and more ask, because of the way that things after that unfold, just how realistic does the MCU want to be when it comes to modern society? It can't decide.
Yeah.
Like, how realistic of a world is this?
And that's like the one thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier that it's a little tricky, because like you had mentioned that it's taking the Civil War stuff and the Winter Soldier tones and kind of putting them together, and you're right.
And Civil War was an extension of the Winter Soldier tone to some degree as well, except it's also an Avengers movie.
Yeah, so the tone is a little more heightened and a little more
I see what you're getting at.
Fantastical. And so the opening action scene of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and to a degree, like there's a lot more color to it, and they're trying to be a little more quippy with it, but then you also have like 8 super soldiers who are like wanting to kill people, and you're like, okay, this is, I mean, of course all the villains want to kill people, but like it's a little bit more serious and like straight-faced about it all. And I don't know, it's kind of
well, and to some degree, there's just no way around it, right? Like I don't want to be hypocritical, or talk out of the other side of my face. Like we want, or at least speaking for myself, I mean, like I want the Marvel universe as a thing, both in comics and in cinema, to be a versatile thing where we can explore different corners of it. And it's always going to be a challenge to make those tones believable and make everything work within the same universe when you want to tell a really serious modern kind of espionage story or a spy thriller at the same time as you're doing my dad is a planet. My dad is a planet.
Your dad's a planet. Go.
So we want all those things to be able to be in the same universe, but at the same time it's very challenging. It's really tricky.
My Dad is a Planet was my favorite episode of Jerry Springer.
Except there would have been a laundry list of other things in front of Planet if it was on Jerry Springer. True. Like, he'd also be like a transvestite and a like. What else would it be? He'd have like 1,000 other things in front of it in the '90s in Jerry Springer.
I have 1,400 brothers and sisters. What do I know about that?
I've been sleeping around with everyone, and I've been sleeping with your dog Woofy. That dog doesn't love you.
You are the father. Okay.
Oh, the '90s.
Yeah. Okay, do you want me to keep going? We got quite a bit of super chat stacking up.
Sure.
That was John Ty, I believe. Yeah, talking about Scovia Accords. Callum Moore gives us a £1 super chat. He didn't say anything, so thanks very much, Callum, for your donation.
That was a very heavy donation.
It was. Thank you for breaking the bank, buddy. That was.
Oh no, I'm not making fun of that. I'm just saying it was a pound.
Oh,
it was very heavy donation because it was a pound.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
T-Edge1 gives us $5. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. What's up, man?
He says, in a old GNN, Vince mentioned beer drink. I've tried Google and I can't find anything. What is beer drink from?
So I don't know.
Best on YouTube.
So I don't know why Vince. Thanks. I don't know why Vince would have ever mentioned that. Beer drink is not a real thing. Beer drink is a hilarious reference. It's one of my favorite things. It's the best. From the Telltale Batman games, where when you go to a bar, there is a big neon sign in the bar for a really generic brand of beer called beer drink, and it shows up in a few places in that game, and I think in the second game it comes back, and DJ and I have kicked around for a long time making beer drink t-shirts.
I also want to say I didn't mean to throw any shade at Callum Moore. No.
Oh sure, no problem.
All donations are welcome, and you can break a bank window with £1 if you just throw it hard enough. So
really, even if it's like triple paned?
Oh well, maybe not. I'm saying like literally like a pound of anything, like weight, like a pound. If you, I don't know, if you apply more force than
maybe if you were like a super soldier, or if you were 8 super soldiers all throwing something that weighed a pound.
That's. I think we're onto something here.
I think we are. Okay. Yeah. Watch that be the entire plot of the 3rd episode of Falcon Winter Soldier. It's just gonna be bank robbing super soldiers throwing things that weigh a pound.
Well, yeah, I mean that one super soldier was able to knock over a telephone pole with just his arms. So if he had like a 1 pound pellet, he could have just like knocked over 3. Anyway,
wow, he's like Toka and Razor.
What is that?
Ninja Turtles 2.
Oh, okay.
The big monsters in Ninja Turtles 2. They knock over telephone poles.
Oh, okay. I need to actually watch those movies.
That's great.
I hear the first 2 are at least.
Then you'll know about the traditional pre-fight donut.
Hey, get all the donuts you can, man. One moment. We're getting more, so I gotta copy and paste those over. What is MX dollars? Is that Mexican?
That's
dollars?
Mexican pesos.
Mexican pesos?
Yeah.
Okay.
It took the first time we saw that we were also perplexed, but we looked it up and now we know.
Because it has like the dollar sign next to it.
Yes.
So
that's Philip.
Yeah, Philip.
Hi, Philip.
Gives us, 50 pesos.
Thanks, man.
He says, oh, whoops, that was the wrong one. Okay.
He has like 4, and we can just go ahead and tackle his stuff if you want to.
Okay. I just arrived, so I don't know what I missed. Hey, do you notice the Snyder Cut makes sense of Batman v Superman?
Does it?
Well, I think Snyder has an understanding of what that movie means, and
yes.
I think he was smart enough to have Justice League be enough of its own story that just takes definitively we know Superman died, and we know Batman's sad about that. Go. So
I don't think there's a lot of straight up retconning in Justice League that makes BVS make more sense, with I guess the exception of just visualizing what exactly is waking up the mother boxes, I guess, because that's a thing that but like when you get to the end of BVS, you don't even need to necessarily know that that's happening, because we are playing a mystery out of what exactly is coming and why. It's related to the visions Batman's happening. We know it has something to do with Darkseid, something Superman died, and now Darkseid or Steppenwolf or something is coming. I don't even think it's a problem in BVS that we don't know exactly why that's happening yet. I just think it's silly that when you listen to Snyder's commentary, it sounds like he somehow expects you to know that that's what caused it, and then he visualizes it in Justice League so that retroactively he can go, this is what I always meant. And as silly as I think it is, at least it's clearly canonical and I know what's going on. You know what's not canonical? And you know what even Snyder still doesn't know? How exactly Batman is getting visions from the future. Still don't know that. We'll never know that, probably. Like, at the end of this, he has a, spoiler alert for the Snyder Cut, at the end of that, he has another dream about the future in the epilogue, and this time, it's not even Flash showing up to him, so we really don't know what caused it. Like, I still never got how Flash showing up in a room tells you how a man is dreaming something that is apparently a premonition of the future, but apparently now he's graduated to, he just has dream powers now. It might as well be Neil Gaiman's Sandman doing it. You don't know.
Hey, I would totally be down if this is how we're introducing the whole Sandman stuff.
I've never read any of that. I don't even know what his powers are. I assume that it's not premonitions from the future, but they couldn't say it is. Like,
yeah, I saw somebody try saying that it was Martian Manhunter giving him those visions, and I was
I saw that too, and
that doesn't make any sense.
That could be a thing that he decides to retcon. It seems like the way Snyder is making movies. I mean, I realize that he shot most of that, but there's. It's impossible to say how much of some of the stuff, even in editing, that he put there is retroactive and because of things fans have said, right? And I think that if he was allowed to continue to make those movies, he could totally make plot points based on what his fan base thinks is happening, so that he can retroactively go, well, yeah, that's what it was all along. So he could have a flashback where Martian Manhunter is just conveniently standing next to and invisibly, because that's a power he has, if Snyder happens to know that that's a power he has, and he's like, memorizing things in their brain. Like, he could later on tell us that's what's happening. But if he did, I swear to God, it would just be because you read that on a Reddit forum somewhere. Because I don't know where you're getting that from the movie. It's not in there.
Yeah, no, I just think it's does Martian Manhunter, can he see the future? Is that one of his powers?
No, that's the other thing. Is when people said that, like, but how would he know? How would he be getting that?
And then also, how is he giving somebody a vision of the future from their own POV?
Yeah, how's he doing that? And then just practically, so he's being a general and then a senator. And he's also cryptically giving Batman visions when at some point he's just going to show up to Batman and tell him stuff.
Yeah, by the way, my favorite moment from our spoiler cast, so that was when you said, what's he supposed to say when somebody walks up to him after seeing Martha? Oh, I'm just being Swanwick. Being Swanwick is one of my favorite Captain
Thanks,
Morgan.
Man. I'm just being Swanwick. Yeah.
All right. So,
hey, real quick, can I derail for a second?
Yeah.
Can I tell you where that phrase came from?
Where did it come from?
Well, Freddy, when he was like maybe 4, we were 3 or 4. We went to my wife's like Halloween get-together thing at her work that they do most every year, except COVID last year, so they didn't have it. But you bring your kids and you walk through their offices. My wife's an architect, and you have a bunch of people dressed up that give kids candy at different places in the office, and it's a lot of fun. They're architects and they have interior designers and stuff, so they build a lot of cool things. And the electricians always do a whole display. And one year they did a whole room as the like 60s Batcave, and another year they did a Ghostbusters one, and they did a Harry Potter one, and it's always really, really fun. Anyway, we went one year, and Freddy walks up to this guy. I can't remember what he was. Was he a fireman or something? Somebody with like or was it? I don't even know. Somebody with a big hat. He walks up to this guy and he goes, "Are you being a hat?"
Oh, Freddy, what a
Eric was there with us, and he still brings that up. That was the funniest. Are you being a hat?
My favorite Freddy moment when I was visiting Kansas was
we're being self-indulgent right now. I apologize, folks.
No, it's fine. Rasco and I were standing there, and then Freddy and Jason were standing, and so Jason was like fake fighting Rasco, and then Freddy was fake fighting me, and then Freddy just looks up at me and then jumps backward onto the couch and goes, "Why'd you hit me?" And I'm like, "I didn't hit you. What? No." That was really funny.
Why'd you hit me?
Anyways,
No, I still don't understand BVS, and I don't think there's anything in Justice League that cleared up anything in that movie. It's just a better movie. And you're right,
yeah,
like it just swipes it well enough.
yeah, yeah. It's able to be its own thing well enough. So, um,
And it helps,
so
like I said before, that it's not a complex mystery plot. Like it's the kind of thing that Snyder can actually do.
yeah, yeah. I think he handled it. Like I said, I think it's his best movie of those three.
Yeah, me too. It's not his best movie.
No, I think 300 is probably his best.
You know,
I think it's
yeah, like from a visual storytelling perspective and from like storyboarding and stuff, like yeah, it is. I still like Watchmen more, but I think 300 is probably the technically the better film. I haven't seen that one. It's a great movie.
I've also not. I want to rewatch it. Daniel Davis says, "Stop being such a hat."
Don't be a hat.
I used to have a hat collection.
Did you really? What kind of hats did you have?
Oh, all kinds, like top hats, fedoras, beanies, ball caps.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I had like a Sherlock Holmes hat. I had all kinds of stuff. I used to have like really long hair, and so in order to like,
You've told me that, but I've never seen pictures.
I had like part my hair in the middle, and I hated how it looked, so I would sweat a hat over it. So, it would. So that was just kind of the thing I liked doing. Anyways, so Philip Kelton, another 50 pesos donation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
He says, "Don't overthink it. Everything is a mess because we are sentient beings, and we were not given a guide of how that work. We have learned the painful way."
He's talking about that really long conversation we had earlier about social media, and yeah, I mean, there's not, and I always say this, like there's not a perfect way to navigate the human experience, and especially like civilization. So the idea, and to some people this sounds cynical. I don't think it is. I think, and I don't mean to get too like philosophical on you or anything, but the idea that there is like one perfect system of government or something is I think it just can't be true and is kind of ludicrous. And I think we're going to spend the rest of the existence of humanity trying to find that thing. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because the human species did not evolve to live in a 8 or 9 billion person civilization. Like we're not built for this. We're not built for this many people to all try to live in one society. And I realize that we have technically like separate societies, and that we have separate governments and things and cultures and stuff, but the world feels a lot more like one culture than it ever used to, and is also a lot more divided than it ever used to be. Like we're so much more connected now, and yet we're also in a lot of ways it feels more splintered. But even if you don't take that into consideration, you just look at, say, the United States, or you just look at Europe, or you just look at especially China, because of how big it is. Like human beings weren't meant to live in like 500 million or billion person groups, and that makes it really difficult to find the best way for everybody to live and get along.
Mm-hmm. I have no concept of this conversation, so I can't contribute much. But yeah, no, I don't know. I read somewhere that like due to largely oh boy, I don't know how to the world population is actually
Stephen Murphy said we live in a society, which was inevitable, but the right thing to say. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. Due to things people use that can limit I think due to like birth control and like things such as that, they're like the world population is kind of like slowing down a little bit. It's not like accelerating at the rate that it was even like 30, 40 years ago. And so I think that's going to be interesting to see moving forward how that looks. I know people are having fewer kids these days. I know that
There's less of an
single,
emphasis in the culture on families and having children and stuff, certainly.
and I also know that single I'm not exactly sure about female rates, but I heard that male rates of singleness is like at an all-time high. And so I don't know. I just think like when it comes down to that, I wonder how many people living right now will never have children, will never do any of that, and how that's going to affect what just the population looks like in 20 years. So I don't know. I think that's interesting. So the next $50 for 50 pesos from Philip Kelton. He says, there are also two types of people who treat other people like sheeps, and people who try to help others to be able to stand on their own. I don't know. I feel like, the two types of people kind of a thing is always an interesting way of categorizing a topic, but I also think that...
it's always an oversimplification, obviously, but...
Yeah, obviously. I think, yeah, but how do you feel about that? Do you think those two types of people is categorized correctly in that analogy?
Well, it's kind of like saying the two types of people are leaders and followers, right? And like it is pretty easy to classify people in that way. I think there's a lot of truth in some people want to be in charge and some people want somebody else to tell them what to do. I think history has kind of proven that a lot of people do seem to be happier when they're given a direction by someone else. I think that's also very often a groupthink issue where people, if they were allowed to kind of do their own thing and all things being equal, they didn't have to be part of a larger group in order to survive. They might find themselves thriving in another way, or if they were just ambitious enough in the first place to like carve out their own way and go that way, but it's just not, either they've had a run of bad luck or it's just not in their nature to do that. But you have... But I think what ends up happening is you do have people who, for whatever reason, kind of all get together, and I do think it's a groupthink issue sometimes where they just want somebody else to tell them what to do, and they might not be thinking of the larger implications of that, or where it's coming from, what the motivations are behind the leader that is telling them that. And then you have other people who, and I'm not saying that this is always good either, of course. You have other people who just want to be in charge, whether it's because they're really full of themselves or narcissistic, or because they really do have good ideas for how to help motivate people or hold people together or whatever. I don't think everybody has to be a leader. I don't think everybody has to be a follower. And I think the extremes of each of those are bad.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously different personality types are going to affect how people, want to receive information and how they will, act on that information. But I know that, like, for myself, like, I'm my twin brother and I we're the oldest siblings of the, of like my little brother and then our step siblings. And, a lot of my friends are like 2 to 3 years younger than I am. And like, that's the way it's always kind of been. Like my next door neighbor growing up was like a couple of years younger than I was. And so I feel like just sort of the role I've been given in life has just sort of been, I'm an older brother type for a lot of people. And so a lot of the times I have like stumbled on my face and like really kind of screwed up royally a lot in my life. And so I've had to learn from those mistakes. And so like I've been offering people advice on certain topics that they're unsure about, not the kind of advice and information I would have liked to have had at that point, because I'm really bad at seeking out information. I'm really bad at seeking out like a mentor or some kind of like authority. I mean, I think I have a fantastic father, but he works, I work. I don't really see my father a whole lot. And, in high school, he kind of struggled at like, where he wanted to like really be a hard parent on us or where he wanted us to go and be ourselves. And so, I mean, I think I had the greatest father in the entire world, but there are still things about myself that I need to understand, that like I need to be given information, or I was never really given a lot of like specific information that I, maybe necessarily needed, but I also think it's made me a much better person as a result. So I don't know. I feel like there is a balance that, of course, needs to be struck between guidance being given to you, and that I'm not saying I've had like no guidance. I've obviously had guidance, but like there are some things I know I wish would have had more guidance on. But then there's also places where you just want to be ambitious and like go for it. You're on your own, and so I don't know. It's a weird balance that needs to be struck, and it's that line, of course, is going to be different for other people. Like if you just want to have a family and have kids and all that, maybe going to work and not being the guy in charge is exactly what you need in that part of your life. And then being at home where you are the authority and you are the person, giving orders, that's where you need to have that level of authority in that part of your life. So I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah, sometimes we don't think enough about how some situations and choices we make in life are just survival strategies. Philip Kelton, and I missed a part of that super chat. I think he said, no, I meant that there are leaders and there are teachers. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But so there are also definitely people that aren't either of those things.
That's true.
And being a teacher is a kind of leader as well.
That's true, yeah. Hold on, I gotta lay that down. We already answered that, but that was a $50 peso super chat from Philip Kelton regarding that. Thank you for your 50 peso donation. I do like Bag Studios' response to this, where he says, there are two types of people in this world: those who like pineapple on pizzas and those who are wrong.
Yeah, thanks, Bag.
Good on.
Once again on Team Pineapple for pizza. Go ahead.
I don't really like pineapple on pizza. I'm shocked it is like the hill people will die on.
I know, it's weird. Well, because like I like pineapple on a pizza, but I don't understand why people get so. It seems like people get worked up more that don't like it, that think it's like gross or something, where they just lose their minds. Like, how dare you put that on a pizza? I'm like, well, you can put whatever you want on a pizza. Like, we have talked about this way too much on this show, by the way. So let's go ahead and move on. This has been coming up a lot lately.
Oh, hey, Dagos. He says, "What's up?" Hi.
Everything. You just wouldn't even. We've covered such a gamut this evening. I can't even talk anymore. 10 minutes will be to 2 hours, so let's go ahead and try to knock out the rest of these super chats so that we can call it an evening, shall we?
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, there's quite a bit here too. Yeah, let's roll as quick as we can.
Another Philip Kelton 50 peso super chat. Thank you for your donation, Philip. He says, "You are not wrong, Cap. It can affect the human condition. And I'm telling you, as a designer, the design of systems affect your development."
Yeah, good call.
That is a good call.
By the way, real quick, somebody earlier, this wasn't in a super chat, but I don't want to avoid it. I want to mention this real quick. Asked where I was getting the idea that we're not evolved to live in like a 8 billion person society. That was something that I heard from, and I brought this guy up before, a life coach that I listened to on YouTube named Richard Grannon. I highly suggest folks listen to him. He does a lot of videos about narcissism. He's very interesting. You may not agree with a lot of his ideas in politics and things, and he's really opinionated and straightforward. So if you don't like what he has to say, just don't listen to him and go away, because he's gonna tell you what he really thinks about stuff. But that was the thing that I heard him bring up. I don't know what his source was, but that's. And when I say that, that's just a thing he said that I agree with. I don't know if he's necessarily right about it. I didn't mean to say that as like an obvious, definite statement of fact. But just observing the world I live in, that seems pretty evident. Like you look at it, to me, you look at history. We've never had this many people in the world before, and even in cultures where there were a lot of people in the same general area or in a country or something. We broke people up into much smaller groups than we tend to these days. Like, you didn't have the kind of metropolitan cities 400 or 500 years ago that you do now, and it's just difficult to wrangle that many people all at the same time. And you used to have a lot more villages where most people would more or less kind of share the same cultural ideals and background, and stuff. And I'm not saying you don't still have that, but you also have just these huge areas where everybody's splintered. And like I would argue that you couldn't even maintain a culture and a society with that many people like you have now without some of the technology that we have. And so how could we be evolved to manage that? We didn't even have the physical ability to do it until, the last 50 to 100 years, I would argue.
Yeah. And
so that's why I'm making that claim. It doesn't come from any particular book source or something.
Well, I think scientific paper or anything. That up because it sounds like, because I know, when it comes to discussion about like how many people live on the world, like food is like a thing that people want to talk about. And I know that like we do grossly overproduce and throw away massive quantities of food.
Of course, yeah.
But it sounds like what you're talking about is like much more than just that aspect of like population. I'd be curious to.
I'm talking about people being able to get along and not drive each other insane. I'm talking about not like literally being able to survive, but more about how it affects the psychology and the way we most aptly are able to get along.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm responding to one of somebody's comment.
I need music for this part.
Oh, hold on, that might be copyrighted.
Don't go on for longer than 12 seconds, Connor.
Okay. So, anyways, Dewan Patterson Powers give us a $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Dewan.
We discovered that it's actually Dejan. We now know the correct way to pronounce that guy's name. Yeah.
My bad. Dejan.
No, not at all. I said it that way for months. Thanks, buddy.
What is your views on superheroes killing? I can say characters like Captain America and Wonder Woman killing makes sense because of their combat experience.
Yep. Once again, this is another case-by-case depends question. The deal for me is always just consistency with a character in what you initially lay down and consequences, right? So when you say it's okay when somebody says it's okay for a character like Captain America to kill because he's a soldier, I would respond with, what's the situation? If Captain America's on the battleground, sure. If he kills out in an alleyway the way the Punisher would willy-nilly, I'm questioning that potentially. It really just depends on how the character is initially characterized and what his values are and what our what the response from the world and the internal monologue in the comic or whatever is for that character. If you and just because we've been here so much, I'll use BVS as an example once again because it's the extreme obvious example. Burton's Batman was before that maybe, where you have a Batman who we keep seeing kill on screen, but it's never discussed, it's never talked about, and ostensibly he is more or less the comic book Batman who would not pick up a gun and kill people for various reasons under various writers. But in that movie, it seems like it's just a director who likes to see that happen on screen, so he has it happen, and that's why people took issue with it. I think it's not, and maybe some people it was just as superficial as Batman's not supposed to kill, so I don't like that he's not killing. If we dealt with that and there were consequences, and we talked about how Batman had evolved and now he kills but he didn't used to, or for some reason this one always did and we're consistent about it, then we can argue about it on the sense of, if Batman kills that way, is he still Batman? We can argue it on the level of, do you want your Batman to kill? But inside of a particular story, just taking it on its own terms, for me it's just about, again, consistency and consequences.
Yeah, and obviously, like you were talking about, just how do you initially, characterize a character? So many this is like one of those things where people want to say like, it's not that way in the comics.
Yeah.
And this is something I say this sometimes, and this is where I disagree with myself sometimes. Of like, well, what comics are you talking about? Because comics aren't like comics half the time, like the comics, And so it's like, different interpretations.
How many runs are just a guy coming in trying to pave over the last guy?
Exactly.
In every way. And how many different Wonder Womans are there? 50? 100? Yeah.
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 So, how you initially characterize and then, keep that character in character, and like, what is the context of like, the soldier killing or the superhero killing? What is, it's like there's a lot of things. Like, for example, I don't necessarily, on principle, have an issue with Superman killing in Man of Steel.
Same here.
My problem is that, like, I don't understand how he necessarily feels about it. It seemed to be a reaction he has. And, like, in the past, he seems to have an issue with, like, people dying, like, and then now he kills somebody, and then it's like he doesn't necessarily talk about why that happens. And I don't know. I feel like, and then moving forward,
you can have characters over talk about a thing like that. There needs to be a discussion about it.
After every scene in that continuity after that scene, he acts like it didn't even happen.
Yeah,
like the final scene of Man of Steel, everyone's like,
it's never talked about. I don't even know if it's public knowledge how Zod died. I don't know anything.
Yeah, and then and then in Man of Steel, he just continues to, like, kill people, and so it's like, I guess he's okay with it, but I don't necessarily know why. That one warlord did have a gun to Lois's head, and I mean, you take her out, she's his whole world. So
right.
The world is dead.
Indeed. All right. Anyway, let's keep going. Thanks for the question.
All right. Yeah. That was Dejan. Philip Kelton with another 50 peso super chat. Thank you, Philip. He says, when I work at Costco, I think at Costco.
Yeah.
When I work at Costco, I kept trying to keep away Watchmen, the motion comic, from the Adventures of Winnie the Pooh in the DVD section.
He's just saying that people tend to put things that are animated together like they're all for kids. Yeah, and that's a problem that I've posted about a few times on Facebook and stuff, where I'll see ignorant folks, and I understand why this happens, at like a Target or something, that will put like rated R animated Batman movies with a clearly marked kids section. And it's just a problem. It shouldn't be there. And you can say, well, parents should always do their due diligence and check the back of the box and stuff. And yeah, absolutely, they should. But I also can sympathize with parents in an overwhelming media world who maybe their whole lives saw Batman as a kid's thing and can't imagine that somebody would make a Batman thing for adults. Like, it's important to get out of your own shoes and put yourself in somebody else's and realize that if you're not inundated with this stuff and into this stuff like we are, the world of superheroes, it just is a thing these days, especially because so much of it is for those of us that grew up as kids, and it kept, I don't know if I even want to say growing up with us, but continued to be for us to some degree, or we kept making things that were for us. It's really daunting to people that are not in that world, that don't know this stuff. They have no idea how to navigate it and how to look at it. And so like there are assumptions that people make, and I think we all do this with different things that we're not really super familiar with, where you'll look at a thing and assume that is for a particular demographic, because it always has been. So I sympathize with both of those things. I sympathize with the guy at Target who might be in his 60s, who doesn't know a lot about animation for adults, and still lives in a world where by and large cartoons are thought of as being for kids. That puts that in that section. I do blame corporate for us with a store like that for not having things, plainly listed. This goes over here. If you're gonna have a thing that says kids, my God, like that shouldn't be there. Yeah. But yes, this absolutely happens in a lot of retail.
All right. Michael McAllister gives us $9.99. Thank you very much, Michael. And he asks, what if the DC EU movies were of high quality and successful, and the MCU was the one that had a difficult time finding an identity? Would you rather that be the case if you had to choose?
No, not at all. If I had to choose, believe it or not, I would rather it be exactly the way it is, which I know sounds very strange coming from me because I'm much more of a Batman fan than I am a Marvel fan. But keyword there is Batman. I think Marvel, and like I've said this 1,000 times, and this is the obvious thing to say, but I gotta. Marvel started as a continuity. It's always been a shared universe in comics, and I think of Marvel as a world, and I think of DC as a bunch of splintered things from different companies that one company ultimately ended up buying up, that they hobbled together into a universe. Those things don't all have to be in the same universe. I don't need a DCEU. It's cool if it works, and I love the Bruce Timm universe. Like it has worked before, and in comics, obviously, it's worked great before, but I don't need that. I don't have to have that. It was much weirder, looking at Spider-Man movies when those started when I was in high school, without a larger Marvel universe, because I was just very used to that, and those things were created together by and large. So seeing a Spider-Man that swings around in a world that doesn't have X-Men and Fantastic Four and stuff, but occasionally somebody will bring up like a Doctor Strange, but we'll never see him, that's really weird to me. A long ongoing, if you ever had a long ongoing Batman franchise where you never mention Superman, not remotely weird to me. Not that strange. Batman is a universe unto itself. It also can be part of a grander universe, but it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm very happy that, regardless of some of my issues and complaints and things, that by and large Marvel's managed to hold together as well as it has as a continuity. And I also don't think that DC, as maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, I'd have to see the alternate universe where this happened. I don't think DC as a larger universe with all of those other superheroes would have been as likely to catch on the way the MCU did, because Marvel just as a universe has always had an identity, and we landed on that pretty well, especially once we got to Avengers, I think, in 2012. But, I could have really seen Connor, unless you start with Justice League like almost happened with Mortal in 2007. If you'd started with that and it was really critically acclaimed and people loved it, and then you splintered those characters off and kept going, you could have had an MCU kind of thing, maybe. It's also possible that people would have really liked that movie as a thing and then didn't care about those characters individually all that much. That is also possible. So I don't know what that would have looked like, but if I have to pick between them, what I would rather have is just a really solid Batman franchise. And it'd be really nice to get one great Superman movie that's actually Superman. Other than that, I don't necessarily need those characters on the big screen. I don't care that much about Green Lantern or Wonder Woman getting a great big screen property, because they're just not huge things I care about. And I certainly don't care that much about, I mean, I enjoy them when they're good. I also don't need them all to live in the same world. That's not important to me.
Yeah, I think that DC does have more defined corners, and they and putting all of those aesthetics together might feel like they clash when you try putting them together. Now, you could say the exact same thing with the Marvel universe, and they made that work, but I think that,
and also with stuff that conveniently hasn't been there yet, because I've always thought that X-Men was its own thing. Like,
that's true, yeah. What I think, Michael asks, like, what if the DC were this way? I think superhero movies would be a lot longer.
That's true. I was just lashing onto the second part of that question, but yeah, if that actually happened, what would it look like? Absolutely, yes, they would be, sure.
I think if we had a similar thing,
I think it'd be less realistic. I don't think that we would be trying as hard to make it look like the real world. I think they'd be more escapist films.
Do you think, because this is like the DCEU got started post Nolan, do you think the Nolan aesthetic sticks around, or do you think they discard that pretty quickly?
See, it's so complicated, because I don't think it would have worked out the same way it did if the MCU wasn't already getting going, is the thing. I mean, that has to exist already. I don't know that Snyder, and I've said this before, I don't think Snyder would have been picked up if it weren't for the MCU, because I think they were trying so hard to carve out the right identity and make it and be as opposite from Marvel as possible. They're not going to be thinking about that if there is no MCU. But you're right. But I also see Nolan as more stylized than the MCU is the thing. Like, everybody talks about how grounded that is, but only in the sense that there are things in Batman that's not as likely to do, because there's not anything especially supernatural about it. But it was more stylistic. It didn't feel like the exact world we live in, especially Batman Begins, because after that we started shooting more in real cities and things. But especially with Begins, you at least started with a thing that felt a little bit more out of time.
Yeah, and I think, like, people say, like, Nolan's more realistic. I think his approach was more practical than anything. He wanted to have, like, some kind of defined reason for every aspect of Batman's mythos, as far as where does the car come from, where do the gadgets come from, all that kind of stuff. And I think that approach to the characters might have stuck around as far as like origins go. Like you might see the Batman Begins model be, okay, let's basically do Superman Begins, which kind of was their idea with Man of Steel. But but if you notice, the Wonder Woman movie was not Wonder Woman Begins.
It wasn't.
Was, but I think maybe if they were starting from scratch and like they had the same acclaim, Man of Steel is as big of a success as, say, Dark Knight was, then I think that Wonder Woman, her origin story would be like a Wonder Woman Begins type of a thing.
Let me suggest this too real fast, though. And we need to get these knocked out. We're already past 2 hours. Connor and I get to talking. But let me also suggest this, Connor. If the MCU doesn't exist and they're not pressured to try to catch up to the success of that specifically as a shared universe, if Man of Steel is as polarizing as it is and doesn't rake in the cash that they wanted it to, which we know is the case, that shared universe doesn't start with Man of Steel. They start over again, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? There's no reason to start from that place if it didn't do the way they were hoping it would. They might go back to the drawing board after that. They were in a hurry because the MCU was there.
That's true. You're right. They would just pull a Green Lantern, basically. They would find another superhero to start it off.
I think they would have gone back and did what they almost did with Mortal, because the only reason Justice League Mortal doesn't get greenlit is because the writers' strike. Or actually, it did get greenlit. It got shut down because of the writers' strike. If that had never happened, we're looking at a completely different canvas for the future, because they start their shared universe with a fully formed Justice League in a universe. I've read the first 40 pages or so of that script, and it's a fully formed DC universe now. Is that way.
And after we got Mad Max Fury Road, doesn't that just kind of kill you inside that George Miller was going to make a Justice League movie? Are you kidding me? Ah!
Yep.
That's
a good point. I forgot who was going to make that. Yeah.
I love George Miller. He's a very good filmmaker. Okay. I want to ask you a question, but we got to keep going.
Okay. Can you do it really fast? Because now I'm so curious.
What obscure DC property do you think becomes a huge, like, gigantic success like Guardians of the Galaxy?
I want to say Resurrection Man, but no. Boy. Do you have something right away that you think would just, like,
I think
get a lot of traction?
Or like, not Justice Society, Legion of Superheroes gets much more streamlined and takes off. That's my guess.
I would say if the Green Arrow TV show hadn't happened, that would be the thing. It'd be like Iron Man.
Ooh, yeah. I think you're onto something there. Okay. Next question comes from...
But also possibly Green Lantern, but then that's not fair because that was so huge in comics right then. It wasn't obscure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Bag Studios gives us $1.99. Thank you very much, Baggy. And he says... would return to NYC and City at War be better if combined?
So those are major Ninja Turtles events in the Mirage comics, and Bag, it's been a while. I know he's been going through the old Mirage comics. I don't think so. I think in a reboot situation you kind of could do that. But the original books, I like some of the interlude stuff. I like some of the Northampton stuff. I just think, like I said, it's been a while since I've read that. I'm pretty sure that happens before, or is City at War like even after Return to New York? I know it must be. Boy, it's just Bag. It's been too long since I've read it to answer that, to be honest with you, because it's just not fresh in my mind right now. I think if memory serves, City at War gets really weird, and I think combining them would be strange tonally and stuff, but honestly, I would have to go back and look at it again. I've read those one time and talked about them with Eric, and it was like 3 years ago. It's been so long. I'm not sure how to answer that right off. My gut reaction is to say no, they need to be separate things, but I would need to reread them.
Okay. T-Edge1 gives us another $5. Thank you very much, Tom.
I've just slept since then.
And Tom asks, the idea is some of the old leaders were put back in charge after the blip and the Sokovia Accords were reestablished, hinted at in Falcon Episode 2.
What
So I guess,
is it hinted enough that we know for sure that it's actually the Sokovia Accords, or like what exactly? I just don't know what's in them, even if that's the case. I mean, I've been seeing people in the comments in the live shows lately arguing about whether or not they're even there. So like even if you're right, it ain't explicit enough. People are arguing about it. Different people think that they're right about this. But you're right about the whole old leaders being put back in charge thing. That's why the terrorist group wants to put things the way they were before, because they think that things were getting less corrupt under a closer to a one world government, and that we're spoilers, I'm sorry, for Falcon Winter Soldier, and that we're bringing corruption back and putting too much of the power in a small amount of hands, is the whole idea. But I don't know how much of that actually has to do with the way superheroes are allowed to operate.
all right. 5590 ERS gives us $4.99. Thank you very much, ERS. And they ask, Cap, if you were Janeway, would you keep Tuvix alive or bring back Tuvok and Neelix?
Well, see, that's why, and that is a weird, silly episode of Voyager. But that's
I actually know about this episode.
Do you? That is the reason that is such a great ethical conundrum, because I don't know. Both sides have a wonderful argument. I don't like the way Mulgrew plays that scene at the end, because she treats it like it's in execution, and I realize that Tuvix is talking about it that way, but if I'm her, I would be playing that differently, because her argument is, but to keep you alive, I have to let my two friends essentially also die, because there's a way to bring them back, and that means that they're not actually dead, really. So real quick, the whole idea with that episode was the characters Tuvok and Neelix, through a transporter accident, get fused into the same person that we end up naming Tuvix. This is in the second season of that show, and I think season 2. And usually with transporter accidents in Star Trek, of which there are very many, even though we still pretend like transporting is the safest way to travel, usually we split people into more than one entity. This time we went, what if we did the opposite and put them together? Something we never talk about with Tuvix, by the way, is that those two characters fused, it looks like Connor, can only happen if also there's a flower in a suitcase, because when the transporter accident happens, they're holding a suitcase and a flower, and those things disappear, so they're clearly part of the chemical makeup of those two people, and when they're pulled back out into the separate people at the end of that episode, there is no suitcase and there is no flower. So I don't know what happened to them and what it means about the personalities and chemical makeup of those two characters moving forward, but I digress. So the whole ethical conundrum is Tuvix becomes his own unique individual based on these other two entities that are fused together, and he lives on the ship for several weeks, and he finds a place there, and people like him, and then finally the Doctor figures out a way to make them the separate entities again. And from Tuvix's perspective, if you separate them, it's an execution, because he then has to die. He is a unique individual. But Janeway's perspective is, if I don't, again, I lose my friends, and it's not fair to them. Like they are like, what about them? And it ultimately just becomes a numbers game for her, basically, and she has to think very coldly and methodically about it. It's one person versus two people. How else could you possibly look at it? And this sounds awful, but like, I feel like I would either have to look at it the way she does or flip a coin, man. Like, there's not a right answer. It's a really difficult ethical conundrum. I love it. It's really good. You're gonna feel like a horrible person no matter what you do, because there's no way to save all three, unless you make a transporter clone, which a lot of episodes have made it clear is not that hard, but no one ever does that. So apparently that's a mulligan.
I don't know. I have not seen it, so I don't know all of the evidence. But
Sure,
I would
sure.
say I would just, if a gun to my head right now, I would say if I'm going to minimize the amount of harm and maximize well-being, I would say you have to get rid of Tuvix, and then you have the two people come back. That's
at least as long as it's somehow a 100% surefire procedure. If there's a chance you'd lose all three, then it's even a more dicey kind of question, I guess.
Ooh, yeah, okay. I didn't.
I guess
even
there's
realize
that. I didn't
was
even
an
think of
option.
that part of it because
That throws another. Yeah, that throws a wrench into it that I would have.
I
to
never
figure
thought of
out.
that because you don't expect it to not work. But
Okay,
what if?
that's true.
But if the doctor had thrown out, there's a 50% chance this won't work.
Yeah. Oof.
Then the answer is a little easier.
Yeah.
Then you probably do
Right.
have to keep 2 Vigs.
Yeah, you might have to keep like. Okay, I need to know the percentage of that because that sounds. Yeah, that's definitely an extra wrinkle.
No one in the comments cares about this, but I love that question. I love it so much. Could have saved it for Star Trek Club. I don't care that you didn't. That was wonderful.
So Bag gives us $4.99. Thank you very much, Baggy. He asked us 2 questions. He's getting greedy with his $5. He says, 1, in memoriam of Connor's beard, what's a style you each wish you could pull off?
Oh wow! First of all, you rocked that beard, and you should grow it back. And I mean, you look great, but the beard was great. I really liked it. It was well done.
Yeah, when I shaved, I was like, I think I've made a mistake. Yeah, no, the idea is I wanted to have a beard during fall and winter, and then go clean shaven during the spring and summer. I'm gonna stick to it, for whatever reason. But yeah, the beard will return. Just give it a while. I'll leave you wanting a little bit more clean shaven, and then I'll go for the beard again. So that's the plan. But what is a style you wish you could pull off?
I feel like the obligatory answer is purple hair because it didn't look great, and I wish it had. Like I liked it, but it didn't look good. I miss to some degree. There's a part of me that misses shaving my head like I did in high school, but it doesn't look good with glasses. So like I had to have contacts back then, and I can't wear contacts anymore. My eyes just project them. So it's one of the many reasons I don't do that anymore. But yeah, what's yours?
I can't pull off like athletic clothes at all. It's not even that like I mean, yeah, I've gained some extra poundage over the last year or so, but that's not even it. Even when I was like really skinny and in the best shape of my life, like I just look out of place and awkward with like basketball shorts and like a t-shirt or something on, like, and like when I'm at the gym, I'm sure I look like a clown. Like I just can't pull off athletic clothes very well. Oh well, it is what it is. Okay.
How many more super chats do we have? Because we're way over time.
Second half of
Oh, that's right.
We have 1, 2, 3 more after this.
All right, let's knock them out.
Knock them out. What's a comic you'd each like to rant about being overrated? Oh, and Cap, you sent that message to me. I think.
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I meant to send that to my wife, but I accidentally sent it to Connor. Well, I didn't say anything to like marriagey.
Yeah.
So that's good. I just wanted you to know that I'll be done in a couple minutes here, Connor.
Oh, yeah.
How embarrassing. Okay, I'm sure you have a better answer to this than I do.
I mean, as far as like comic books that I think are overrated, I'm gonna probably go with the first thing that comes to my mind. I'm sure there's another one I could go with, but I'm gonna say Metal, the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo thing.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I feel like it's I know that like a lot of like Snyder gets a lot of flack for coming across as like he's just ripping Morrison off. I've historically come to his defense when it comes to that, but
he kind of wasn't.
Like,
I mean, I enjoyed it,
but
what I read of it anyway. But
I feel like Metal is just him trying to do Final Crisis. It's like Final Crisis, the explained version. And look, the appeal of Final Crisis is that it makes no sense until the end, and like you start piecing the things together, and it's like just an experience trying to put it all together. This is like holding your hand through something that's supposed to be wacky and crazy, and then the wackiness and craziness kind of doesn't materialize into anything because you're explaining it all the time. And like the word vomit exposition of like Scott Snyder's comics as you progress just like began to drive me crazy. Like his Justice League, like I would be turning the page, see the walls.
I didn't read past the first issue of that,
and I'd go, okay, here we go. Like I got into like the point where like I would get into like reserve mode where I'd be, you know what, just like completely zone out, just read the words on the page, don't care what they mean, just read them just to say you've read them. Like that's where I got with his work after a certain point. But I really like Zero Year. That is magical. But Metal, I think, is the most overrated like comic book event that I've read.
That's fair. Man, I'm having a hard time coming up with a really good answer to this. I mean,
Spawn.
well, sure, but that's because people didn't actually read it. They just like the costume and the initial premise. No, that's probably not wholly true, but I think there's a lot of people that didn't read past a certain point and think it's better than it is. Flashpoint, because I like Flashpoint, but like not to the degree that a lot of people did, and like it was the side stuff that was more interesting. But like, I think people really overpraised the Martha Joker stuff. Like, so I don't know. Like the miniseries itself was overblown because it actually didn't function without the side books, and they didn't communicate enough how important the side books were, because all the really cool, interesting world building stuff was over there, and Flashpoint itself was just the road to change us into New 52 is pretty much all that was. So all the stuff people talk about with Flashpoint is in the side stuff. So I'm saying that that's overrated, but also specifically the Thomas Wayne Batman stuff I think was kind of overrated, overappreciated. Like I like the idea. I like the suit. I needed more time with that character. Like I think that was the side thing that needed to be as long as Flashpoint was, to be honest with you. And I always had like I get stuck in the trenches with this kind of thing, Connor. Like I had a hard time with the internal logic of the premise with that, where it was like it's a little bit convenient that the whole universe changes, but it's all based on like initial decisions that people make, but then somehow the guy who initially became the Joker doesn't become the Joker, and it's Martha Wayne. Like that seems like an Elseworlds thing before it's a like splitting off universe multiverse thing, right? Like it's kind of
In the Flashpoint universe, there are the two Jokers, right? Like
are there?
Oh no, I don't know. I'm just making.
Okay, yeah.
3 Jokers recently, but
right.
my brother Spencer is a huge Flash fan, and he does not really like Flashpoint. He says it's a premise before it's a story, because all the stories were done, elsewhere, not in the core series. And he gets frustrated that that's treated like it's marketed like that's the Flash's Death of Superman or Dark Knight Returns, or that's like the big Flash story is Flashpoint. And he's frustrated that's not even really a Flash story.
That's fair. Well, and it ends up being too much of a Batman story, and that's the reason that we can't even have a Flash movie without Batman in it now. But anyway, let's finish these up. Go ahead.
This one, just like this is almost like the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Bag $1.99. Thank you, Bag. He asks, "What's your favorite kitchen appliance?" Go.
Toaster oven. And real fast, I'll tell you why. Because I used to hate them, and now I live by them. It's a thing that my wife uses and loves, and I grew up with a toaster, not a toaster oven. I did not understand it. Toaster oven cooking is wonderful. It's remarkable.
I'm going to say the freezer. Okay.
The freezer. Where would we be?
Right? Look, meats would go bad a lot earlier.
You can save them.
You can save them a lot longer. Okay, Mr. Roboto, $5. Thank you, Mr. Roboto. Mr. Roboto asks, what super teams and or Power Rangers group costumes might you do for a Halloween in the future?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've always wanted to do Ninja Turtles for my kids, and now we're going to have 2 girls, so now I could do like a Venus and an April, I guess.
No. I've always wanted to do from the Watchmen, the Minutemen, like the first generation.
That's great.
That's my favorite era of the Watchmen universe, and I love those characters. So I would want to do a Minutemen.
And easier costumes to put together if you found a good, seamstress or whatever. Yeah.
If they look slapped together, that's almost better.
It's almost better. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Philip Kelton.
We already dealt with that one. Let's keep going. We already dealt with that one.
That's correct. And then, we have 2 more after this last one.
Sure.
Mr. Roboto, $2 super chat, asks, will you ever review
Sergeant Kabuki Man? Yeah, probably not. I would have to look into it and make certain that it counted as the kind of thing that I have to do for Superhero Rewind, but that's not anything I know anything about, so I don't have any preference to review that. But if it counts as an English language superhero movie, then I would have to at some point. But that's always the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Another Philip Pesos super chat from Philip Kelton. Thank you very much for your contributions, Philip. He asks, half of the things Morrison writes are overrated. He is not bad, but he is in love with himself. Superheroes and people get pulled into that.
See, I like Morrison stuff a lot more than I used to, and I simultaneously I don't know, like, I actually agree with what you just said, but I also like a lot of Morrison. I don't know, like, I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah, I like him. I've actually not read a lot of Morrison lately. I read Klaus every year, and Klaus is the best thing ever.
It is, yeah.
Everybody should read Klaus. But I don't know. Like, he's like one of
those. And that needs a big screen adaptation stat, by the by.
Yeah, and we're not talking about the Netflix movie. That's not yeah. We're talking about like the comic book Santa Claus comic.
Don't you agree though? Like, that needs a movie. It'd be wonderful.
I mean, if I ever become like a successful filmmaker, I will fight tooth and limb to try to make that movie because it's so good. And then give us HBO specials for like this one shot adaptations every year. Boom, that'd be great.
Yep.
Anyways, lastly,
you could do that as a vignette film, maybe. Although some of those are longer and more complicated than others, I guess. But
like, and how do you do Joe Christmas, which is like an advent calendar? That'd be difficult. Anyways, Mr. Roboto, I think this is the last super chat of the night. This is from Mr. Roboto, $2. Thank you, Mr. Roboto, and he asks, "So Cap, what about a Tuvix podcast? Yes, maybe."
I mean, nobody would care. That would be the thing that finally gets 0 views. No, I mean, I just said everything I have to say about that, and we've done a commentary, and yeah, I mean, we've dealt with Tuvix on the channel. But thanks for the interest. Yeah, somebody said real quick that OAW, that's true, and I don't know why I haven't thought that much about this. You've got a full Power Rangers team now. That's true, but I have 3 boys and 2 girls. I've got a full Power Rangers team. It's brilliant. I mean, by the time that they're all old enough to really do that well, Jason will be 18. So Jason will finally be the age that Power Ranger actors were when they became Power Rangers. And then all the kids. So yeah, if I had to pick one, I would try to get Dino Thunder suits, and that would be just wonderful, just the best. Or maybe me being older, because I would be like I'd have to be like the 40-year-old Power Ranger. Like, I would do the Jason David Frank Power Ranger, and then I would have Jason do Trent. He'd be the White Ranger, and then the other 4 could be the other main. No, that wouldn't work, because there's actually only the 5. That's what's so interesting about that show, is they don't have a 6th Ranger. Their 6th Ranger is a 5th Ranger, because they have a 4-man team once Tommy becomes the Black Ranger. Dang it! No, that doesn't even work. Okay, no, all 5 of them. So Jason would have to be Brachio then. Anyway, nobody cares about this. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. Connor, thanks for moderating, and thanks for hanging out longer than normal. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, hey, my pleasure. I got nothing going on. So, my brother will be here in a few. We'll watch Godzilla. We'll watch Terror of Mechagodzilla. I'll finish watching Sex and the City tonight, and it'll all be good. So that's what I got going on.
Tentative plan right now is for Connor and I to do Godzilla Kong on Sunday. I was kind of on the fence about it initially, because I'm not super excited about that, but I know a lot of people are, and so now I sort of kind of want to see it and just see if it's worth the hype, I guess. And I also realized I did how we felt about some of the other movies in that continuity, so like I guess I ought to go ahead and do it. And Connor's stoked, so we talked about it today and decided to go ahead and do that. But I'm out of town this weekend, so if I get back early enough on Sunday, I'll know in a couple days, and I'll be able to let you guys know if we're doing a show on Sunday. If I can get back early enough Sunday night, then I'll go ahead and plan for a show, but it'll probably be a later show. It'll probably be like 9 or 10 my time, I imagine, if we do that. Probably live, but if we do it too late, we might just do it pre-recorded and do a shorter one. But we'll do a review of that movie of some kind. Probably not a full-on spoiler cast, probably just how we felt about if we're capable of still doing those. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the news that's fit to print. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll be back again on Thursday with DJ for another Captain Logan show. You guys are great. Thanks for all the questions, and we are going to bid you farewell right now. I was Captain Logan.